Hey everyone, what is up, and welcome back for episode 6 of Higurashi When They Cry. So, in the last episode, Keiichi got sick. Sick? I don't know. And went to lunch with Ooishi-San. I got a lot of information, right, regarding how all of the killings have been tied to his friends group. But the most relevant thing is that that information clearly reached his friends that he had this conversation. And so, things just won't be the same anymore. You know, Mion and Rena both are like looking at him like, I mean, they straight up tried to kill him. Like, you know, put a like sewing needle in a snack they gave him, you know. And so I just imagine today he's going to school and things just aren't going to be the same. Now, I'm really interested to see what this is going to entail, man. I'm so excited, though. I worry for him, though. Anyways, let's go ahead and jump right into this episode. Already did all the tips, so we'll just continue. The sound of muffled footsteps stopped in front of the door to my room. A moment of silence, as if whomever they belonged to was ascertaining if I was inside. Of all the things I should have been doing, I continued on with my restless slumber. I was very much conscious, but my body hadn't caught up yet. Even with danger bearing down on me from just beyond the door. Oh man. Like, the thing is, we're in a position where it's like, this could be completely innocent. This could just be his mom. Right, just walking by. But then there's always that concern that it's Rena, like, here to kill him or something, you know? It was as if I was completely paralyzed, unable to move. Without a doubt, this was sheer terror. Please, just leave. Hey, why isn't my body awake yet? They came into my room right now, then... Oh god. It is just his mom. I totally called it too. But the worst part is we're in a position where it's like there's so much reason to be scared that it isn't just his mom, you know? And the fact that him in the morning hearing his mom walking by instilled this much terror into him. Man. I mean, I'm not going to act like I wouldn't be the same way, but it really shows how much he's being impacted by what's going on around him right now. I swung to my feet and threw my covers at my mom, who was opening the door.
Nani, Keiichi? どうしたの?
He was scared out of his mind.
ごめん、寝ぼけてた。
I thought it was still 1 or 2 a.m. But the morning sun was already streaming through the gap between the curtains. Nothing like morning. Yesterday, I must have fallen asleep right after that. Then I should have gotten a full 10 hours of rest. But it didn't feel like that at all. My internal clock was completely screwed up and my sense of balance felt off. Felt feverish enough that it was clear to me that I was still not well.
どう、Keiichi? 体の調子はどう? 学校行けそう?
I felt far from well enough. No, I wasn't mentally fit to go. I was still plagued with the terror from yesterday. If I had swallowed that needle, what would have happened? What if it had pierced my tongue? There was undoubtedly a murderous intent, but I don't think that's all it was. If they really wanted to kill me, then there were other, more certain ways to do it. They wouldn't resort to such a dubious method as having me swallow a needle. Meaning, I didn't want to believe it, but going that far was just a threat. From Rena and Mion. Aren't you glad you didn't die? The next time we'll use a more assured method. Like that. Something like sending a letter with a razor inside would have been a joke compared to this.
ちゃんと病院は行った? お薬は飲んだの?
まあ一応。
Kinda. Something about my mom's dubious gaze bothered me. She seemed more concerned about her son missing 2 days of school rather than him being sick. It was definitely mental fatigue. He wasn't really physically ill. Yeah. That's a better way to put it. I don't know why those words never popped into my head. I knew he wasn't actually sick, and that's why I said he was sick, right? But
一度生活のリズムを崩すとなかなか戻らないんだから。そら、起きて起きて。病は気からって言うのよ。
something like that. I'd heard that line many times before. I was given an award in elementary school for having perfect attendance, but I wasn't like I was healthier than everyone.
ささ、顔洗ってらっしゃい。ご飯はもうできてるわよ。もうレナちゃんが来るまであんまり時間がないわよ。
Oh, that phrasing, no. Mom's tone meant I couldn't argue about it, so I had to give up on skipping a second day.
そうそう。今の壁にぼたもちを投げつけたのはケイチ？
It's certainly possible.
ダメよ、あんなことしちゃ。お父さん、怒ってたわよ。
I didn't feel particularly guilty for doing it, so I didn't have much of a reaction. Also, Mom didn't question me any further about it. She headed back downstairs after she was certain I was getting up. What Mion said as she left yesterday, I'd hate it if you missed school tomorrow, came back and dwelled in the back of my head. What did she mean by that? I didn't even have to really think about it. She was saying, don't be absent. Taking that a bit further was the same as her saying I should just go about living my life as if nothing happened. If I showed any signs of acting unusual, it would probably result in them making their move. Yeah, so it's going to be really awkward, because I think everybody's going to try to act like nothing happened, but in their head, everybody knows what's happening right now. And I'm sure eventually it'll reach a bubbling point. Probably this episode, right, where everybody's giving him those dead eyes. If I acted differently, someone like Ooishi-San, for example, might end up noticing that something is up. Meaning, if I don't watch my mouth or did anything differently from the norm, in effect, it would end up communicating something to those who were undesirable. And it seems that was something that the girls didn't intend to forgive. So, if I just went along as normal, no harm would come to me. Is that how it was going to be? All that misery I experienced up until yesterday would, almost creepily, just fade away. It was an enticing deal. Just by forgetting everything I'd seen or heard these last few days, be able to keep living on like normal.
そんな虫のいい話あるわけ？
That's hard. That's genuinely extremely difficult. Like such a difficult spot to be put in. Like, I think a lot of us like to think we'd stand up for these like injustices and these killings and the friend that died. It might be different if you actually have a friend die. But like, I think a lot of us think we would, until all of a sudden, imagine you're actually in a situation where your life is being threatened and you have a way out. How many of us would take that way out? It's probably a lot. It's probably a lot more than would care to admit, you know? So that's a really hard spot to be put in. And he knows it's selfish, but he's considering it. I don't think he's going to go through with it. He wouldn't have much of a game if he was just like, alright, word, bet. I'll just... You know, I'll just... Y'all got it. Don't worry about it. Y'all can just kill as you please. But... I don't know, of course he could, and then eventually it fails, but... You know. Anyways, back to it. I swallowed hard. I once again deliberated on the idea that I had just rejected. Mion was probably a good person who had her friends at heart. She was giving me, who had mistakenly broken some rule of theirs, a chance. Was what I did really something so unforgivable? But Mion had given me another chance. She was saying, if I just forgot everything and kept living on like I had been, I'd be forgiven.
Keiichi! ご飯冷めちゃうわよ。急いで降りてらっしゃい。早くしないとレナちゃんが来ちゃうわよ。
あ、今行くよ。
Oh man. I crammed my textbooks into my bag and hastily made my way downstairs. This is where it's going to get really interesting. I picked up my somewhat bland breakfast. It seemed that I didn't have much time. It was already past when I usually met up with Rena. Given yesterday's events, she'd probably be here in the next 5 minutes. I needed to be ready to head to school by then. I had to forget everything that had happened the past 2 days. Forget it all and return to my normal life. For this to be normal, I'll have to be where I normally meet up with Rena. Today of all days, the rice was dry and hard to get down. I jumped at the sound and dropped my chopsticks. A chime signaled that Rena had arrived. Mom hurried me along.
ほら、レナちゃん来ちゃったわよ。
I was going too slow.
急いで急いで。
My mother's merry smile and my gloomy face were polar opposites. Honestly, I was reluctant to see Rena, who was waiting there on the other side of the door. The Rena on the other side. Was it the Rena I knew? I couldn't keep her waiting. I needed to do things as usual.
おはよ
Hi. An invigorating greeting filtered in from across the doorway.
う。ケイチくん、遅かったから来てみたけど、今日はどうかな？かな？
Yep, you'll have to be. The manner in which Rena was concerned was, without a doubt, the Rena I knew. That was probably only if I reciprocated. Forget everything from yesterday, and as though nothing had happened. Forget about the gruesome dismemberment. Forget about the mysterious deaths that happened the following years. Forget about the people falling to their death, and the terminal illness and suicide, the fatal beatings, and the disappearances. Forget it. Forget all of it. Forget that Rena and Mion were scary. Of course, forget it all. Forget about all of it. Forget about the Moki, too. Forget. Rena, once again, asked to make sure.
学校行けそう？
Yeah.
あ、大丈夫だよ。
よかった。じゃあ行こう。みーちゃん待ってるよ。
Rena showed me her usual bright smile. I couldn't find any hint of deceit in her expression. My nervousness dissipated, giving way to relief. When that music stopped, bro, I thought we were about to see the eyes.
なのにさとこちゃんね、絶対にできるって意地になっちゃって。
As we were walking, Rena talked about a lot of different stuff, more so than usual.
それで？
さとこちゃんブキッドだから何度やってもできないの。はう、かいかったんだよ。
Classic. Everything Rena talked about was just silly nonsense, so I just replied every so often and laughed from time to time. It was a rather laid-back conversation. We passed by one of our neighbors and they called out to us.
あれ？ケイチちゃんにレナちゃん。今日はちょっと遅いんじゃないの？ミオンちゃん、先に行くって言ってたわよ。
Oops.
みーちゃん怒ってるかな？怒ってるかな？早く行こう、ケイチくん。
After greeting our neighbor with a smile, Rena turned back to me and poked her tongue out. Not expecting that, I couldn't help but crack a smile.
あ、ケイチくん笑った。
なんだよ。
Rena stopped and stared at me. Oh no.
ケイチくん、今朝もなんか元気なかったから、まだ風邪が治らないのかなって思ってたけど、大丈夫みたいだね。だね。
I'm always just so worried that the eyes are going to come back and that the mood is just going to shift. Every sentence, right? Every sentence has me lingering onto that possibility. With a grin, she gently poked my cheek. It was a bright, sincere smile. Hey, Keiichi Maibara, how can you still doubt Rena after she shows you a smile like that? Maybe I just had a high fever up until today, and I imagined everything that I thought happened because I was bedridden and delirious? I really hoped that was the case. God would grant me just one wish. There's only one thing that I'd wish for. I'd want what happened in the past few days. More specifically, from the night of the Watanagashi up until last night. I wanted all of that to have never happened. I wonder how many times I'd wished for this these past few days. As long as Rena kept on smiling like this. I think it might just become reality. So I wanted Rena to keep on smiling. Keep on smiling.
で、ケイチくん。昨日のおはぎ、ちゃんと食べてくれた？
Something like that, yeah. That vain wish of mine was instantly shattered. My heart began palpitating. The relaxed morning mood suddenly became frigid. Rena's smile was the same as usual. Her eyes were gentle as usual. Those mochi yesterday. Did you eat them all? Of course she wasn't asking the question at face value. In other words, Rena was asking, did you get the message? She was probably trying to convey that.
Keiichi-kun?
I was reluctant to give an answer. Rena stopped walking and stared deeply into my eyes. Don't hesitate, Keiichi Maibara. Rena was acting the same as always, wasn't she? I needed to respond in my usual way. Naturally, of course. But both my throat and mouth had gone dry. My lips were stuck together. Hurry and answer, Keiichi. Not that much time had passed. I could still keep the conversation going naturally. My boy just can't get it out. I had to say something quickly. Rena playfully mimicked what I said when I was finally squeaked something out. Rena's reaction was still normal. Seems that there wasn't as long of a pause as I had thought. Somehow I finally squeaked out the rest. However, my strained efforts neither sullied nor brightened Rena's expression. For a moment I panicked, thinking I had replied incorrectly. But after a few moments, Rena broke into her usual soft smile and giggled with a joyful voice that seemed to echo through the morning air. Being strung along by that laugh, I couldn't help but laugh as well.
そうなんだ。で、全部食べたのかな？かな？
Yeah, you didn't answer the question. My timid smile froze again. Did you make it without swallowing the sewing needle? Was that what she was asking? If I'd swallowed it, I wouldn't be here.
いや、全部は食べきれなかったからさ。まだ残ってるんだよ。
I was scared out of my wits, but that's how I played it.
あれれ？どれがレナが作ったのか当てる宿題はどうなっちゃったのかな？
あの宿題って今日までだったっけ？
Bro. Ain't no way.
うん、今日までなんだよ。みーちゃん怒るよ。きっと罰ゲームだね。
Yeah, it's called murder. We both laughed at each other again. To a casual observer, it was just a typical morning. I could just let myself believe, then even I'd think it was just the usual morning routine. But I was certain I wasn't mistaken. There was something unimaginable buried beneath the facade of this giggling Rena.
嘘だ!
I recalled that unexpected, piercing voice that I could hardly believe came from Rena's mouth. The moment that image crossed my mind, I felt a cold sweat trickle down my back. Was it only at that particular time that something evil had possessed Rena? No, that was wrong. It was still Rena. Ooishi-San told me, didn't he?
実は調べてみたら、竜宮さんは引っ越しの少し前に学校で謹慎処分を受けているんですよ。なんでも学校中のガラスを割って回ったんだとか。
Rena had a disorder that normal people didn't. No matter how pleasantly she smiled, that fact would not change. But I couldn't even imagine how she looked as she broke all the glass throughout the school. One thing I knew was that it wasn't something spur of the moment. It was some sudden outburst of anger, and maybe she'd break a pane or two. But she broke all of the windows all throughout her school. Just imagine going through your own school breaking the windows with a bat. Swinging full force at each pane of glass, one after another, paying no heed to the flying shards. Your classmates aghast, unable to move from the sudden turn of events. Wonder where she could have found the most windows lined up in a row. Probably the hallway. Walk, wind up. Walk, wind up. It was difficult for me to connect that horrifying image with Rena smiling at me right now. But I just had to imagine it. Impossible because it was unimaginable. That naive way of thinking no longer worked. This webcam's finicky. The unpleasant, piercing sound of shattered glass, the crunching noise as Rena treads across the broken shards, walking towards me. Towards you? Rena's classmates going pale as they forget to even breathe. I wonder what they did as Rena came closer, breaking windows along her path. Did they earnestly try to bring her back to her senses by saying something? Or did they jump at her, trying to stop her savagery? Or did they run to the staff room to call for the teachers? Probably none of those. Probably sat there in silence. In the face of that blood-curdling sight of Rena busting window after window, undoubtedly, all they could do was silently clear a path for her. Dumbfounded, just clearing the path for Rena to continue. It would be cruel to blame anyone for looking the other way. No, they weren't simply looking the other way. They knew it was the only way they could to protect themselves. They'd done something differently from the rest. They may have suddenly found themselves as Rena's new target. What would Rena have done to whoever attracted her attention? The answer was obvious. She would have undoubtedly acted according to her whims. Meaning I would, be the next window. Rena, staring into my eyes, shards of glass crunching and crackling underfoot as she drew closer. I was also drawn into her eyes, paralyzed. Then Rena struck me with the bat over and over again, like I was one of those windows. I crouched down onto the floor, desperately protecting my head. Rena didn't care whether it was my head or my back. Zealously, she hits me again and again. What kind of expression was she making as she was doing this over and over again? I peered up to see. Her expression was so indifferent. It was completely unnerving. Because no matter how many times she struck me, I didn't make as pleasant a sound as the other windows. She struck me continuously, over and over again. The sound Rena wanted didn't come out. Our classmates standing around didn't try to stop her. They didn't want to be the next window. Somebody save me. Turning a blind eye unless we're hanging out? But of course, everyone in class scrambled to obtain the highest standardized test scores. It gained nothing from saving a cram school tryhard like me. Eventually there would be a faint sound, similar to when you crack open a walnut, and some sort of reddish-black spray would shoot out. Well. Anyways, it wasn't that Rena momentarily lost herself in her anger. After forcing myself to breathe and calming down my heart, I recalled what Ooishi-San told me.
でですね、そのカウンセリングをした医師のカルテに、レナさんの会話内容が記載されているんですがね。
Bro's been zoned out for a while. You better hope he's at least walking. Like, because if he's just standing there, Rena's about to lose her mind.
その中に出てくるんですよ。結構。
何がです？
出てくるんですよ。お社様って単語が。
Following that, Rena was suspended and had regular examinations at the hospital. Then, as Rena was undergoing counseling, she said it over and over. Oyashiro-sama.
お社様っていう幽霊みたいなものがですね、夜な夜な自宅にやってくるっていうんですよ。枕元に立って自分を見下ろすんだって。
Oh, I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty horrifying though. That was only a piece of their conversation, so I still couldn't see the big picture. But it was by no means a happy little conversation. And what Rena did, was she saying that ghastly incident was a result of her being possessed by Oyashiro-sama? Up until now, I didn't want to believe in Oyashiro-sama's curse. That's why I wanted to say the mysterious deaths every year happened because of some sort of conspiracy. Every time I talked with Ooishi-san, I was more certain that the deaths were the work of men and not of some curse. Except, if it was people perpetrating the incidents, my friends were somehow deeply connected. I refused to believe that the curse was real, and I would have to believe those who acted the kindest to me were deeply involved in the incidents. Why? How? For what reason? Rena was everybody. It was much more painful and troublesome than accepting that it was just Oyashiro-sama's curse. In the aftermath, Rena had admitted to her doctor that it was purely because she was possessed by Oyashiro-sama. It did not say purely in there anywhere. I think I accidentally read possessed too early and just put something in there. To her doctor that it was because she was possessed by Oyashiro-sama. Not purely. That changes the meaning of the sentence. I had to reread it. What a strange sense of relief from that. So that's how it was. There wasn't a second side to Rena. She did that. because she was possessed by something strange like Oyashiro-sama. It wasn't Rena's fault. Oyashiro-sama was the one to blame. I knew. This was all backwards. Refusing to believe there was a curse, I wanted there to be a human perpetrator. Now that my close friends were the ones under suspicion, I changed my beliefs at my own convenience, saying it was Oyashiro-sama's curse to blame. Which was the better choice? Accepting that Oyashiro-sama's curse exists? Or that Ren and the rest of them were deeply involved in the string of mysterious deaths? I didn't want to think about it. If I just didn't think about it, I'd be able to continue the same as always. I wanted to believe that, but that was no longer possible. I had received their message. It was pathetic of me to try and bend the meaning to my own convenience, regardless of whether my opponent were a human or a curse. I won't let it kill me. As if I would just bend over and give in. No good reason at all. Earth to Keiichi?
Keiichi-kun?
Whew, that was one heck of a monologue. So, yeah, I mean, that monologue that was really good, I'm not gonna lie. Him questioning his own beliefs and then temporarily trying to convince himself that it wasn't Rena's fault, it was a curse, and then realizing that's just too convenient, that he can't bend over like that, right? And of course, when he imagined Rena smashing in all of those windows, right, and what everybody looking at her would have seen, right? It's pretty chilling. And of course, when he was sitting there taking the beating, right, it reminded me a lot of the intro. I mean, I don't remember everything from the intro, so maybe I'm making connections where there are none. Because I don't actually remember much about the intro, to be honest. It's been like 2 months. Okay, about a month and a half. But I need to watch it again. To see like the wording and stuff. But I remember it was some kind of beating. Right? And I mean, something that small when we know who Rena is right now, I mean, it would come as less and less of a surprise if it was Rena, you know? But I don't think we even really need to connect back to that at this point, because at this point, I was using it to draw connections about the now, not what that intro was. I still don't know what that intro was. Maybe like a glimpse into the future, right, of this route. Does this game have routes? It has chapters. Those routes? I don't know. I actually don't know. I said route like I was playing Fate. I actually don't know how this works. I know they're like different arcs, but those don't have to be separated. Anyways. What was I even saying? That could have just been from some future thing, right? Like a vision of the, like, you know, future into this chapter. I mean, I don't know. Or maybe it was just foreshadowing and won't be relevant again, and I'm reading into it too much, and I already picked up on like the foreshadowing there. But I feel like there's probably more to it than just that. I don't know. But there's no point in drawing that many more connections to it. Because the point is, we know something's up with Rena. We just don't know what. Anyways, let's move on.
さっきから変な顔してる。なんでだろう。
Inhaling sharply upon hearing Rena's voice, I came back to my senses. Before I had realized it, we were already at the entrance. Shaking my head a few times, I exercised all those terrifying thoughts. No matter how you looked at it, there's no way Rena could have done such terrible things. What happened to the Keiichi who just said he's not going to bend over backwards here? It's like I was trying to placate myself. As I slid the door open, a blackboard eraser loaded with chalk dropped down on my head the moment I stepped into the classroom. You should have seen this coming. Foolish. The chalk dust went into my eyes, inducing a brief moment of agony. Yeah. Bro, you took an L today.
ずる休みのケイイチさんにはお似合いですことよ。
The truant.
ケイイチもレナもおはようございますです。
Good morning, Rika.
おはよう。さとこちゃんにリカちゃん。
Not quite in the mood for it. I didn't really react to Satoko's trap. Satoko braced herself as I passed by, expecting me to attack her. She seemed a bit disappointed as I simply walked by, silently.
何なんですの？張り合いがありませんわ。
She expected to get flipped.
圭一、まだ本調子じゃないみたいです。
Yeah, not fully.
うん。だから、今日は加減してあげて。ね。
Suddenly there was a slap down on my shoulder. It hurt a bit.
よ、ケイちゃん。しっかり休んできた？
No, not really. It was Mion. My mind was full with the stuff about Rena. Mion was also a party of interest. Remember Keiichi, that hawkish gaze from yesterday.
ああ、おはよ
なんだなんだ。ずいぶんと覇気のない挨拶じゃん。差し入れのおはぎ、ちゃんと食べてくれなかったの？
Ugh. Like this because I ate them. Those words were itching to be blurted out.
う。やっぱ食欲がなくてさ。いくつかは食べたけど、だいぶ残しちゃったんだ。
あれ、じゃあ宿題は？どれがレナの手作りかってのの回答は？
圭一くん宿題忘れなんだって。
Foolish. Yep, you're getting punished.
ありゃあ。じゃあ仕方ないね。罰ゲーム。
Like, it feels like they're going straight back into like the slice of life kind of stuff, right? I feel like that's on purpose because now there's this dissonance of who they really are, right? And what we've been doing with them this whole time. Flashing a lurid smile, Mion returned to her seat. There was nothing from our exchanges that would cause our classmates to suspect anything was amiss. Of course, anyone listening to our conversations up until this morning wouldn't see anything suspicious. That was why it was so frightening. They acted in a way that, regardless of what happened to Keiichi Maibara, no one would ever suspect them. That fact had me terrified. Soon the teacher came. After she asked how I felt and took attendance, another dull, ordinary day began. And let's hope it stays dull and ordinary for the sake of your heartbeat, bro. It's not going to beat much longer if it isn't. This free study period was a convenient time to consider where I stood. I gently closed my eyes and pondered the ridiculous position I was in right now. First of all, what I shouldn't forget was how dangerous of a situation I was in. I had fallen out of favor with them. After interacting with Ooishi-San multiple times, I could see it as I was getting closer to the heart of the matter. The warning yesterday with the Moki was a good indicator of that. No, calling it a warning was just my habit of understating things. Probably had no meaning beyond stunting my progress and buying themselves some time. Until they had a method of completely erasing me. They were just biding their time. Even though they were keeping me under their thumb with threats, it didn't change the fact that I knew too much. The chilling sensation on my desk made me recall Satoshi Hojo, the boy who was using this seat until last year when he disappeared. Was he also similar to me? Did he learn something he shouldn't have and was erased? Damn. I wouldn't let them get rid of me so easily. Never. But were they really trying to kill me? I've had these contradictory feelings for a while now. Even though I suspected them, I felt I had to cover for them. Even having witnessed all of their suspicious behavior, a morning like this just made it all seem like an elaborate hoax. No, that's just what I want to believe. Outing my friends? Covering for them? My life was in danger. Was it? Actually, I was debating the wrong point. Given my current situation, those points were something that should have been deliberated on a long time ago. But really, Ren and the rest of them, were they actually aiming to kill me? The little voice inside me continued to torment me with these unresolvable trains of thought. Guessing somebody's gonna snap it at it. Are you an idiot, Keiichi Maibara? The answer should be obvious. But maybe that sewing needle might have just been an accident, right? How could you screw up and drop a sewing needle into a piece of mochi? The benefit of the doubt can only go so far. Both Rena and Mion had acted and behaved suspiciously. Maybe it was all some sort of misunderstanding? What kind of misunderstanding? It wasn't just suspicious, it was outright ludicrous, right? Rena just corrected me for lying. Mion only asked me about what I had for lunch. Rena was standing outside my door eavesdropping for a solid hour. She was probably just waiting for my phone call to end. For a whole hour outside your room? And is it normal to go home afterwards without saying anything? You heard from Ooishi-San, didn't you? About what Rena did at her former school? But at the hospital, she said it was Yashiro-sama's fault.
いい加減にしろよ、前原圭一。お前、命を狙われてるって自覚あるのかよ。
Oh no. Oh no. You should not have said that out loud. Any chance he had of pulling through this, gone. I don't even want to left click. Like, I already know this is going to be so bad. I inadvertently blurted those words out loud. Hearing myself say that so directly left me dumbfounded for a few moments. Afterwards, I had to look around to check if anyone else had heard it. My little soliloquy cut a little too close to the truth. Even though I could feel the murderous intent from Rena and the others, part of me somewhere was still trying to deny that. This late in the game, such hesitation could be fatal. I knew that. But I was just your average student, a man living his normal, ordinary life. Do you think I could suddenly believe my friends, who I'd been happily laughing together with up until last Sunday, now intended to kill me? Right?
甘えるな、圭一。
This time, I remembered to keep my voice down so only I could hear him. He sounded louder. There was one thing I now understood. I was too soft. I didn't completely understand how dangerous Rena and the rest of them were. No, I wasn't trying to understand. I was too soft for not listening to Ooishi-San when he was earnestly showing me the heart of the matter. I didn't listen because I was too busy pretending to be dejected. I didn't comprehend it. I was just running away. I didn't comprehend it, so nobody had any notion to try and kill me? I needed to get rid of such naive thoughts. As I made that resolution, I heard the bell signaling the end of class. So soon. The day was already over. I didn't recall eating lunch or doing anything in class. My friends were putting their desks together in preparation for club activities. Punishment time. Not long ago, I would probably have happily jumped into that circle.
あらあら、ケイチさん。帰り支度とはあんまりですことよ。
The way Satoko spoke to me was so typical and familiar. It almost physically hurt.
あれケイチくん、今日は都合悪いのかな
There's no way. I mean, he knows he needs to act normal. Right? Or like, things are only just gonna get worse. I think he just needs to hightail it out of town, but I don't think he's going to.
今日こそ二人で大勝利。はあ。
That was just the other day we said that, huh? That was just the other day, huh? Seeing Rena's expression... Excuse me. Seeing Rena's expression, which said she was really looking forward to today, was hard to take. Hey Keiichi, maybe Ooishi-san is just some enormous jerk trying to separate me from the others by lying to me. Slap. Trying to expunge such weak-minded thinking, I slapped myself in the face.
Keiichi-kun?
Yeah. Was Rena really trying to kill me? I wish someone would tell me it was a hoax. I didn't care if it actually was one or not. I just wanted someone to say it was. Ugh. Yet another weak-willed thought. How did I ever become this naive?
大丈夫？頭痛いの？
Boy, he slaps himself again. His head gonna hurt. He's gonna give himself a concussion. Apparently, that was how my inner dilemma appeared to Rena.
顔色悪いよ。一人で帰れる？送ってった方がいいかな？
Oh, that's how you get murked.
いや、いい。ごめん、一人で帰れる。部活はみんなでやってくれよ。
Upon hearing that I wasn't going to participate in the club meeting, Mion pouted unhappily.
ケイちゃんがリベンジ熱望してたってんで、今日はせっかくこの間の推理ゲームにしたってのにな。
He's really not too worried about that anymore.
圭一さんにはリターンマッチに臨む熱いハートはありませんですの？情けないですわね。
I wouldn't fall for some dumb taunt. Without even a real retort, I just grabbed my bag and was about to get up. Someone's hand perched itself gently on my head.
圭一、具合悪そうです。
Yeah.
かわいそうですよ。
Yeah, how very unfortunate. It was Rika-chan. She was stretched up as far as she could, doing her best to pat my head with her petite hand. It felt so nice. Which made things even harder.
ごめんな、みんな。じゃあ。
That's all I said as I quickly left the classroom. He said something to me as I was leaving, but I couldn't make it out. Dang. I mean, that's the resolve he's gotta have, but... like, I don't know. I don't see things getting better before they get worse if he's gonna avoid them like that, you know? I'm not saying he should just get over it. I don't think I'd get over it. But I'd have to hightail it out of town. The problem is, like, I guess his parents aren't gonna move, right? What's he gotta run away? Live by himself? I don't know. I don't think he's had thoughts like that yet, but, like, I don't know. I don't think there's anything that would keep me in that town. I managed to make it all the way to the entrance in that state of mind. Took out my shoes, put them on, and went forward. Hard in that heart, Keiichi Maibara. They were, for some unfathomable reason, trying to kill me. They were plotting something dubious, watching my every move. But I couldn't hate them. Because, weren't they my friends? Part of me lamented my naivety, while another part lamented the fact that I had lost something important by lamenting over it in the first place. But like my personality was being ripped in two, along with my body. This is what Oyashiro-sama's curse was like. And it was just too harsh. Hey, Oyashiro-sama. I was wrong for not believing in your curse. But I believed in it now. Completely. Your curse does exist. Seriously. Give me a break. I beg you. Come on. You make it all the way home? I honestly didn't really think you'd be able to. Dinner was unusually bland. It had no flavor or aroma. The miso soup that normally tantalized my appetites had tasted like nothing but boiled water. Dad was eating with us that night. It was a rare occurrence in this household. When he got into his work, he ate and slept on his own schedule. My dad never cared about the time. Since my dad was at the dinner table, it either meant he had just reached a good point to take a break or he was in a slump.
とにかく作家のモチベーションってものを理解してないんだよ彼は。
タイアップの話だって口約束なんでしょ？そんなに反りが合わないならきっぱりお断りしたら？
Ooh, these are inadvertently the words he needed to hear.
助け合いの世界だからお互い様だとは思うんだけど、これじゃ仕事にな。
I wasn't able to pick out much of my mom and dad's conversation, but I could tell it wasn't a very pleasant topic. That, of course, made the disgusting food even less appealing. Staring listlessly at the exchange between my parents, my mind wandered off to the same thought processes I had going all day long. Friends close to me. No, they used to be friends, but I could no longer trust them. Right now, I was greatly lacking in allies. People I trusted. People I could depend on when push came to shove. They were something I just didn't have. Having just one ally would have been incredibly reassuring in the currently hopeless situation I was in. I put down my chopstick and looked over at my parents, who were still talking about work. The first course of action that came to my mind was to tell my parents everything. Currently, there wasn't a single person from Hinamizawa I could trust 100%. That meant the only people I could trust were my parents. You're just gonna sound like a kid making things up, you know? Lying to hide the truth of something, right? You know, if you're like, yeah, I'm not friends with Rena anymore because she's trying to kill me. And you're like, okay, so what really happened? What did you say to her? Like, you know, like, who would just believe that? If you're a parent that would believe your kid, right, when they, like, are like, yes, all of my friend group was trying to conspire to kill me after murdering several people, right, over these past several years, how many of you would really be like, it checks out, alright, let's go. Like, we're on the same team here, and how many of them would be like, okay, that's a nice story, bro. I don't know, does he really have the guts to tell his parents? But if I told them everything that happened up until now, would they understand? Rena, for example. That neighborly Rena, who was so diligent in looking after me, came to get me every day, and sometimes brought over a share of what she made. How could I explain that she wanted to kill me? No matter how I explained, it would probably be difficult for anybody to comprehend. My somewhat eccentric dad wouldn't understand. My high-strung mom would probably drag me off to a psychiatrist in the blink of an eye. Sadly, that was the amount of trust that existed in our relationship. Even if they did come to understand, what could they possibly do? Frankly, you'd just be putting them in more danger. Unless they could uncover the truth, they wouldn't be able to protect me. No, by informing them of these unnecessary things, I'd be putting my parents in danger as well. Well, I'm glad he realized that. Considering that the victims in past incidents were often married couples, I couldn't even joke about it. For the entire Maibara family to have an accident, or to just vanish into thin air, was easily possible in Hinamizawa. What was important here was that knowing something unnecessary put you in danger. The most unsettling question was, how did they know that I knew? As long as they didn't know, my parents might not fall victim. That was one way to think about it, I guess. At least it was like that in my case. After I found out, things started becoming odd. In other words, it meant the following. As long as my parents didn't know anything, nothing would happen to them. Which means that this house would be a safe haven as long as my parents were in. I don't know how true that is, though. Historically, like, how true is that? I'm trying to think about the killings. I mean, is there one where we can think about much collateral? Right, if we assumed that the last guy who, what? Was the last... I don't remember all the cases. Goodness. This is what happens when you take a break like this. This is what happens. I can't remember if the last killing prior to this Watanagashi, where Tomatake died, right? Where... what, Satoshi? Goodness, is that even how you say her name? Oh god. I don't even remember. The bully, right? Like her cousin, alright? Did he die, or was he the one who, like, disappeared? Is he like the onikakushi? I don't actually remember. I don't fully remember, and that's on me. That's a detail I just needed to remember, and don't because of how long it took. But I don't know how historically true that is. I genuinely just don't know. I feel like that's wishful thinking to say that just by being here and your parents being here that you're 100% safe because they wouldn't do anything. I don't know, like, it might be true, but I mean, there's always the chance that they're like, we'll just kill all of them. I don't know. I knew these were just assumptions based on conjecture on top of conjecture. Wanting this house to be a safe haven, that was the pinnacle of my weak-willed method of thinking. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. I mean, I wasn't saying it was the pinnacle of this weak-willed method of thinking, but it does feel like wishful thinking. I had to concede that it was not completely safe. It was only safer than the outside. I'll give you that, though. I knew that I couldn't rely on my parents. No. I couldn't risk getting my parents involved. And the only person who could be an ally would be Ooishi-San. Him, and him alone. He was the only person who understood the situation I was in. He didn't care so much about my safety, but he was without a doubt passionate about solving this case. It was a bit frustrating. Ooishi-San was basically the whole reason I was in this mess. Now to get out of it, I had to rely on him. Meaning, it was all going according to his devices. It was just my job to look appetizing while bobbing in the waves as bait. Then, when the fish started gathering around, Ooishi-San would pull up the big haul. It was slightly infuriating, but even I thought that was the best course of action. So then, what should I do? Patience was the first rule of fishing. Just keep waiting until the fish actually bites. But I wasn't simply bait. There were lots of ways for me to struggle before being devoured. When they struck, I needed to somehow dodge just enough and tag out to Ooishi-San. No question it was going to be hard. The timing to bring Ooishi-San in would be difficult. He was in the city, not Hinamizawa, so if I phoned him in my moment of need, it would take him about 30 minutes to reach me. So I needed to run away for those 30 minutes. For example, we set up a rendezvous point for dire situations or something. I just have to hide out there until Ooishi-San arrived.
よし。少し見えてきたぞ。
I was still being chased around in the dark by boogeymen, but now I knew which way to go. I would never imagine this would be so reassuring. Well, yeah, probably be best if I had a concealed weapon for when things got rough. That boy he's gonna get the strap, huh? Typically, that would call for a switchblade. That wasn't too reassuring for combat. Also, since it was recognized as a weapon by the public, that also wasn't good. Yeah, that's true. And the last thing you really want to be in is a knife fight. Really, when the time comes, a long weapon like a bat would work in my favor. I remember there was a metal bat at school. I could be confident with that when push came to shove. If I pretended I was practicing my swing, it wouldn't be suspicious for me to always carry it around. I could go to school early tomorrow and secure it. Just possessing a weapon may be enough to deter them. Also, one more thing. Insurance. It could be something like a note or a memo. I could write down everything that's happened as a sort of journal. Ooh, be careful with that, bro. Because if they find you've written that down, you're really getting skunked. In case I suddenly vanished, the journal will be left behind. With my journal in his possession, Ooishi-San should be able to avenge my death. I left my parents engrossed in their conversation about work and went back to my room. This is some heavy thinking. That boy's got a plan for his own death in case it comes to that. I can tell you, I would not want to be the one writing this right now. Just so God, help me God, so help me God. A friend I like just suddenly shows up tonight, and you got that paper, and she's like, "What is that?" I don't know. It's nothing. I tore out a piece of paper from my notebook and made my way to my desk. Last time I wrote a journal was for summer homework in elementary school. In the off chance something bad happened, the police could use my diary as a lead. I should only write down the facts. How should I start? I jotted down my thoughts as they came. I, Keiichi Maibara, am in fear for my life. It made me laugh nervously. It was a line that showed up often in detective stories. I never even dreamed that I would be in the type of situation where I'd write it myself. I did not know why they were after my life. And the others were suspicious, but I had no proof. And that's why I couldn't write anything more. I laughed wryly at myself for writing such a passage draped in mystery. Would the police be able to get the hint from reading this enigmatic passage? I can only pray that they would. What I prayed for the most, though, was that the journal never needed to play its part. Here, I laughed nervously. It was too simple. So I wrote down one more line I just thought of. The only thing I do know is that it has to do with Oyashiro-sama's curse. Was that too much? I probably shouldn't write more than that. You probably shouldn't have written that. If I wrote any more, then it would seem like I was just delusional. In order to appear to the reader that the person who had written this was of sound mind, I chose not to write anything else at that point. I just needed to add more as I learned about the truth. I folded the paper and thought about a place to hide it. By hiding it somewhere obvious, there was a chance that they would uncover it instead. On the other hand, if it was in too obscure of a location, then there was the risk of nobody finding it at all. In the end, I decided to take the clock off my wall and stick my folded note on the back of it with scotch tape. After that, I put the clock back into its normal position. Yeah. It didn't look like anything was hidden behind it. Failing the webcam again? Now I needed to set it up such that if anything happens to me, my parents could find it. I looked at it from countless different angles until I was satisfied and I made my way downstairs. Like, what do you say? Hey, if I mysteriously die, check the clock. My parents were still talking about work. It didn't look like it was going to end anytime soon, so I cut in.
話中ごめん。ちょっと聞いてもらっていいかな。
I never started off a conversation like that before, so my parents were both startled. They stopped talking and turned towards me.
どうしたのケイチ？
お願いがあるんだけど、聞いてほしいんだ。もしもだよ。
圭一、急ぎの話じゃなきゃ後にしなさい。お父さんとお母さんはちょっと今、急ぎの話をしてるんだ。
This is pretty urgent. I didn't think their talk was more urgent than mine. In any case, I stated my
も
request.
しもだよ。俺が死んだらさ、
Both of my parents' eyes went as wide as
死ん
saucers.
だらさ、俺の部屋にある時計、あれを棺に入れてほしいんだ。
If they did that, then they'd probably find it. My memoir. Yeah, no, that's... I don't know. I don't know how, I mean, sure. They'd probably find it. But I have a feeling, if somebody were to actually kill him, they wouldn't... They'd be the type to grill them for this information. So I don't know, just saying it like that feels so dangerous. Both my parents remained wide-eyed, not moving an inch. I couldn't blame
あ
them.
の時計、工作の授業で作ったお気に入りなんだ。頼むよ。
どうしたのケイチ？何かあったの？
Just say not feeling well. So I was just thinking about it. Mom was finally able to ask me with a questioning gaze. Of course, it was a normal response for when someone suddenly talked about a subject like this. I felt bad about making them worry. But right now, I just wanted them to think about the clock in my room. With the awkward mood leaving the room in silence, I decided to go back up to my room.
俺さ、明日は早くに学校に行きたいから、もう寝るよ。おやすみ。
Saying only that, I left the living room. I needed to get to school early tomorrow and secure that bat. I should make today the last day I went to school with Rena. As I climbed the stairs, I heard my mom call my name, but I pretended not to hear her. It wasn't something I could talk about with my parents. If I talked about it, it would only make things more dangerous. The fight that had begun was mine and mine alone. I couldn't rely on anybody. I wouldn't be killed, not when I still knew nothing. I don't know. Felt like telling them that was honestly potentially more dangerous than like helpful. I got one new tip. Whoops. Not feeling so hot.
最近、ケイチくんの元気がないね。機嫌が悪いのかな？
I sure do wonder why.
さーて、どうしたんだろうね。恋の病にでもかかってるんじゃないの？
Something like that, yeah.
みーちゃん、それ飛躍しすぎ。どう思う？
さあね。
Y'all both know. What do you mean?
ケイちゃんひょっとして、かな？
わかんない。
あの日、ケイちゃんと車で話してたの。中年のでっぷりした男だったんでしょ？
うん。間違いない。
大石のやつ、ケイちゃんに何を吹き込んでるのかな？
真剣そうだったよ。ケイチくんは顔面蒼白だった。
あのね、レナはよく知らないだろうけど、実はあいつ、お社様の使いなんだよ。
There's like literally no way. This. Alright, we're just gonna keep going.
何の話？
あいつが現れるとね、必ず鬼隠しが起こるの。本当だよ。
あれ？そうなの？
おととし、リカちゃんのお母さんが受水したでしょ？その直前に大石が尋問してたんだよ。
そういえば、サトシくんが転校する前にもいたね。
転校レナはいいやつだよな。
で、今度はケイチくんの前に現れたんだ。じゃあ、ケイチくんも鬼隠しになっちゃう？
An empty silence hung in the air, and then it was suddenly interrupted. By loud laughter. Yeah, to me, it does not feel like that significantly changed any of our views here, right? The idea that this is actually all some ruse by Ooishi-San is an interesting one. There is way too much evidence in the contrary, right? Like, I don't know. Is it possible? Sure, of course it is. Do I think it's likely? No. Right? I guess they have a point, right? But I think if anything, it's kind of an inadvertent, like, yeah, he appears before everyone before they die because they're the ones willing to take the information, and that's why they have to end up dying, right? And the way they were laughing like that didn't feel like some, like a normal response to that conversation. That felt like a they were in the know kind of laugh, you know? I don't know. Maybe I'm too set in the ideas we already have, but at the same time, how can you look at that sewing needle showing up in the snack, right, and think, yeah, they didn't do anything? I don't know. I guess it's possible it was genuinely an accident. But that does not seem anywhere close to likely. I'm a lot more doubtful of the idea that Ooishi-San has something to do with this. Okay, I don't want to say that. I'm a lot more doubtful that Ooishi-San has something to do with this and his friends don't, than I am the idea that Ooishi-San is exactly who we think he is and the friends are exactly who we think they are. You know? It's possible that Ooishi-San and the friends are like working together, right? I don't know. It being the detective isn't that unlikely when it comes to stories like this. But for some reason, it's just really not immediately jumping out to me as like, yeah, I think that's it. You know? At the end of the day, the problem is, at the end of the day, a lot of our information comes from Ooishi-San. So now when he's being put into question, I don't know. But at the same time, sure, a lot of our information is from Ooishi-San, but we've seen plenty firsthand to suggest that our friend group is not who we think they are, you know? And way too much foreshadowing. So it's not that I'm clearing Ooishi-San, it's that I don't think he's like the mastermind behind it all and that the friend group is innocent. I think that'd be way too convenient. That was an interesting tip. Just kind of making me think about that was nice, at least. Anyways, let's talk about today. So far, honestly, that's not quite what I expected, right? He was doing his best to act normal, but how do you act normal in a situation like that? So, like, you know, he was distant all day, and he couldn't stay over for the club, right? And has ended up taking precautions in case something happens to him. He's seeing this almost as like a war that needs to be fought. You know, he's getting a baseball bat. He's leaving a final message, right? It's debatable how effective any of these things are going to be, but he's clearly strapped in, right, for the ride. He's not giving up. So, I can only imagine it's going to get pretty crazy from here, you know? I can only imagine. All right, let's go ahead and continue to the next day. This could be a decisive one. God. The way this game constantly flashbangs you is just... goodness. This was the first time I'd ever woke with such clarity. It was 5:59, just moments before my alarm would go off. I was amazed at the precision of my internal clock. I had preparations for the next day of school before I went to bed. I had made preparations for the next day of school. I changed quickly and descended to the deserted lower floor. It appeared that my mom was still asleep. Neither breakfast nor lunch was ready. Yesterday, I just unilaterally declared that I'd be leaving early today, so it couldn't be helped. Slathered jam on some bread and topped it with instant cocoa. Just as I was finishing a breakfast, Mom rose groggily from her slumber.
あら、ケイチ、今日は早いのね。
No kidding.
学校の行事か何か？
No, not really.
別に。
Answering bluntly, I picked up my bag and stood after stuffing 2 slices of bread down my throat.
もう行くの？お弁当は？もうちょっと待ってくれないとできないわよ。
I waited for her to make my lunch, then it would end up being the same time as usual. If I did that, it would raise the chances of me running into Rena and Mia on the way. Yes, from today onwards, I was going to school alone.
今日はいいよ。
じゃあお昼はどうするの？
抜け出して商店で菓子パンでも買うよ。
そう。じゃあこれ、お昼代ね。
She's just rolling with it, though.
ちゃんとレシート持ってくるのよ。
I took the 1,000 yen bill from Mom and slipped it into my
こ
pocket.
んなに早いけど、レナちゃんたちもこんなに早いの？
No, that's the point.
いや、俺だけ。
レナちゃんには早く出るって伝えてあるの？
I have no reason to tell her every little detail, do I? Finding it difficult answering the onslaught of questions, I made an annoyed face.
レナが来たら、ケイチは先に行ったって伝えてよ。
ちょっとケイチ、待ちなさい。
Nope. It's not that I didn't trust my parents. I just couldn't rely on them. They couldn't help me. I could only hope that they didn't get involved. It was safer that way. My mom's annoying voice was cut off by the slam of the door. Dang, annoying voice? Disrespectful. For the first time since I moved here, I headed down the road to school alone. Why would I not be surprised if he was still being followed? Like Rena was just waiting this whole time. Up until now, I had always walked down the same path at the same time each day. So I always met with the same people at the same places. But today was different. I didn't meet the people I normally would, and nobody was at the places where I would have normally met them. Of course, Rena wasn't in the spot where we usually met, and there wasn't anyone at the spot where we would have met up with Mio. The length of the tree shadows, the morning air, and the brightness of the sun was a completely different type of morning from what I was used to. Without a doubt, it felt strange. It left me with the impression that I destroyed the illusion Hinamizawa had set up for me before I had enough time to prepare all of the props needed to deceive me.
あら、ケイチくん。今朝は早いわね。みんなで早朝から待ち合わせ？
Nope. The person who called out to me was someone who we always passed by as they were taking a walk along the edge of the fields. Her name was, I forgot. Of course, this wasn't the spot where we usually passed each
今朝
other.
は早くに目が覚めちゃったので、気分転換なんです。あまり気にしないでください。
I threw out a random excuse.
レナちゃんやミオンちゃんはどうしたんだい？
Screw him.
今日は一人なの？
Yeah.
ええ、まあ。
I was being asked the same type of questions my mom was asking, so I answered them in the same uninteresting, vague manner. It wasn't funny being asked where Rena was each time I passed by someone. Maybe it was to be expected. It was because for so long, we were always together so amicably. Even I felt that if I let my guard down, we could still be friends. Stop it, Keiichi. Don't think about that anymore. You spent all day yesterday thinking about how dangerous it was to go soft, didn't you? Beep, beep, beep. A car horn blared from out of nowhere. Even though I was walking lost in thought, that horn was way too close. A mechanical behemoth barreled at me from behind, catching me completely off guard. By the time I turned around, the van's hulking chassis was almost on top of me. I'd seen plenty of cars veer to the opposite shoulder to avoid pedestrians, but this car was doing the opposite. Felt like there was somebody on the opposite shoulder, and the van was swerving in my direction to avoid them. That blissfully ignorant train of thought delayed me from realizing something much, much more important. Yeah, you're about to get smoked by a car? That large mass was hurtling right at me. Was it going to hit me? Yeah, I wouldn't call that a coincidence, dude. The inside of my head instantly flooded with a painfully cold liquid. And then, in that moment, the scene before me, no, time itself had frozen. How literally are we talking here? Is this the, oh, things are getting crazy, I see things in slow-mo, or is this really about to get like supernatural, he has time-stopping powers? We'll see. In the silence of that frozen moment, I compared the van, so close that I had no way to dodge it. In my body, the upper half twisted awkwardly in order to look behind me. There was no way I could dive out of the way in my current position. I lost focus now. This moment would unpause, and I'd probably be plowed over, caught in this silly pose. Bend my upper body over towards the patty by the side of the road. If I bent far enough, I had to get away with just being hit by the side view mirror. As soon as the thought crossed my mind, the temporal stasis was shattered by the deafening sound of the van. The side mirror struck my shoulder, sending me spinning off through the air like a top, locked in my contorted position. Ugh, a splash. Sent tumbling through the air, I crashed into the muddy patty by the side of the road. My entire body was soiled and drenched, but the choice I had made in that instant was unmistakably for the best. You lived. I was covered in mud, but when the alternative was being hit by the car, it was the closest I could be to being unscathed. Rising up from the patty, I had enough in me to glare over at the stopped van and yell profanities at the driver. I'm not sure if he was able to see me, but the van sped off suddenly. That was a hit and run, dog. They were trying to kill you. I couldn't help but continue yelling out profanities. The disgrace from being covered in mud hurt me more than any physical wounds. I slogged through the muddy patty and made my way back onto the road. Shit. I'll track you down and sue you. I go looking for a van, I'm sure to find it in this little village. The path I was on had rice paddies on either side, and it had become so narrow that one car could barely fit through. It wasn't a place you could tear down full speed in a car, let alone pass by pedestrians. Not only was it a narrow road, but the car just now was closer to my side of the road than the other was when it went past me. Even as I cursed, I was desperately trying to suppress the dark cloud roiling up within me. This wasn't a coincidence, dude. This wasn't just a hit and run now. That car just now was trying to run me over, wasn't it? Thinking back, I did feel like there'd been a car creeping up on me slowly for a while. That's right. As soon as I'd parted ways with that person taking a walk, I had that feeling the whole time. If it had wanted to pass me, then I had no shortage of chances. Normally I would have felt suspicious and turned around sooner. But I was lost in thought, and I was kicking myself for not realizing it was there sooner. And then, when the path became narrow and there was no one else in sight, he floored it. If I had hesitated for even a moment, the result would have been no laughing matter. As the adrenaline rush from nearly being run over subsided, the realization of just how terrifying the preceding events were sunk in. There was no doubt about it. That van was intentionally trying to hit me. Cold, viscous sweat seeped from my scalp and slid down my back before dribbling off. I struggled to avoid falling into a panic. There was still the possibility that this really was just an accident. Calm down, Keiichi. But also don't be so naive, Keiichi. Being that lax will get you killed next time. You need to always be on your toes. Don't give them any openings. If my enemy was really out to kill me, then next time, he would use a more reliable method. That time came, I was acting like I was now. Getting covered in mud was the price I had paid for my own naivete. Naivete, that's how you say it. Covered in mud, but without injury. Not even a sprain. I guess this is what you would call the silver lining. Why did I struggle so much with that? I began walking again, this time cautiously. I wouldn't even show a hint of carelessness. I suspected only Rena and the others up until now. No, it was because I had suspected them that I had believed that there were no other enemies. Ooishi-San had said so, didn't he? There was the possibility of a village conspiracy. Was I really mired so deeply in the situation that I had no choice but to try and carry on as usual? Wouldn't it be safest just to hole myself up in my house? No. But the moment I abandoned my regular routine, everyone around me would abandon theirs as well. It's just too horrifying of a thought. I recalled the tales Ooishi-San told me when Hinamizawa was still called Onikakushi. Frightening tale of an entire village of demons hunting their prey, surrounding them and eating them alive. One must not interfere with the demons. One must pretend not to see it. The enemy were numerous, the whole village. The villagers, with their unwavering faith in the curse, would do nothing to help me. The strong, sudden flash of sunshine made me slightly dizzy. I had no idea what was going on anymore. He's going to be out of it for so long, Rena's going to show up. When I suspected it was the work of man, I would catch a glimpse of Oyashiro-sama's curse. When I suspected it was Oyashiro-sama's curse, someone would poke their head out. What was coincidence? What was intentional? Who was my enemy? Who was just a bystander? No, what I really, truly wanted to know was, how did I end up with a proverbial bullseye painted on my back? Eventually, an answer in a form I can understand will appear. I don't care when that'll happen, because until then, I cannot die. That alone fueled my resolve to fight and will keep me alive. Okay, he's got the resolve. That's good at least, but he's got to be more cautious. I remembered seeing the metal bat in the gym storage shed, but there was a padlock on the door barring my entry. Well, that's... yikes. At the very least, I wanted to get my hands on it before everyone else arrived at school. I circled around the school grounds impatiently. But all I could find were things like pieces of lumber, nothing that I could bring into the classroom easily. Then, I had an epiphany. I should search inside the classroom. If there was something in the classroom to begin with, then it wouldn't be a problem. I could tell that everyone's indoor shoes were still in their lockers. Good thing I came early. Nobody else was here yet. I wondered, what could I find in the classroom? I didn't think I could find an especially effective weapon like a bat, but it couldn't be helped at this point. Until the gym storage shed was open, I needed to find a substitute. A lingering hint of naivete whispered that there was no way I'd be attacked at school, but such soft ideas would no longer protect me. Okay, I respect this. I can respect that. I hate that it's come to this, but I can respect how serious he's taking this, you know? To think that they were slowly making their way into parts of my life that I had once thought impenetrable. In the worst case, my own house might not be safe anymore. That was an incredibly frightening thought. But I believe that not considering the worst case scenario would have been even more frightening. Anyways, I will survive. As long as I lived, I would definitely be able to escape this labyrinth of nonsense. Definitely. I hope so. My exploration of the classroom came to an impasse. That much was to be expected. There was no way there would be anything that could be a weapon in the classroom. In case of emergency, there was probably nothing I could do but swing my own chair around. My gaze landed on the lockers that had come to be used for personal storage. The locker that Mion used to store her pile of games was among them. There was one for each person in the class, all lined up. Of course, there was one for me as well. Oh yeah, there's supposed to still be a tracksuit in my locker. Seeing me covered in mud would be strange. I should go change later. But first, I needed a weapon. One of my classmates came, it would be hard to rummage through all the lockers. I swiftly began opening the lockers one by one. Ooh, he's breaking into them. Okay. It's gonna be really bad if somebody walks in and sees this. They're mostly just filled with things like gym clothes, personal items, and umbrellas. Umbrella. If I couldn't find anything better, then this would have to be my weapon. About to give up on finding anything decent when I opened a locker that held exactly what I wanted. It was, without a doubt, a metal bat. The odds of it being exactly that don't seem very high. I mean, immediate guess is Rena's locker, right? But that's not a good sign. It was well worn and pretty beaten up, but there was no doubt it was usable. That locker that reeked of mold, there also hung a baseball uniform. Oh, it's probably the other guy's, wasn't it? Probably the locker of a student in a Pee Wee League or something like that. If that was the case, then he'd probably ask for it back. That time, I could hear the voices of the children scuffling their way noisily in from the hallway. Amongst them, I could make out Rika-chan and Satoko. Yeah, boy, you better close that thing.
おはようございますです。今朝はお早いですわね、ケイチさん。
Yeah, well, you are here quite early, huh? I nonchalantly hid the bat I was holding behind my back. How do you nonchalantly hide a baseball bat behind your back, bro? They're gonna find it. They're gonna see it.
なんなんですのその身なりは。泥だらけでしたよ。
Oh, true.
ああ、まあちょっと会ってな。すぐ着替えるから勘弁しろ。
With that said, I began taking off my clothes. Satoko began to blush just as I expected her to. So they're what, gonna turn around and gonna hide that thing?
レディの前でお着替えなんてしつけがなってませんことよ。
That's one of your eyes still open.
着替えをじーっと見てるレディもしつけがなってないと思うぞ。男子は更衣室がないんだから諦めろ。
As Satoko feigned disgust, she went into the hall, still blushing. Conversely, Rika-chan continued to stare at me, preparing to change.
リカちゃんもレディなら着替えを見てるのは良くないと思うぞ。
She's not leaving because she's suspicious of you.
僕はレディじゃないですからいいのです。
She deliberately pouted and looked at me with upturned eyes.
じゃあリカちゃんも今からレディだ。
You're trying too hard to get him out. I feel like this is where we're gonna see the creepy Rika eyes. I just...
レディなら仕方ありませんです。
Oh, never mind, it worked. Rika-chan, appearing to be satisfied with being considered a lady, made her way to join Satoko in the hallway. Just as I breathed a sigh of relief, Rika-chan stopped suddenly and turned back towards me. Here it is.
ケイチは野球を始めますですか？
Seems that Rika-chan had noticed the bat.
ああ、ちょっとさ、体がなまってさ、ちょっと素振りでも始めようかなってな。
健康に気を使うのはとても良いことだと思いますです。
You can take that in more ways than one. She was talking like an old lady, despite her appearance. After saying that, Rika-chan started to leave again, but stopped and looked back at me once more.
そのバットなくさないでくださいねです。
Yeah, I wasn't planning on it. That just feels like a thinly veiled threat, I'm not gonna lie. Or obviously she just knows we jugged it from somebody and she knows whose it is, but it seems she already knew I took it out of someone's locker. There's no name on the locker door. I didn't know whose bat it was, but I'd be borrowing it until they complained. I'm willing to bet it was the guy who was in the last one. Oh my goodness. Satoko's cousin. I can't remember his name. It wouldn't be for long, just until the gym storage shed was opened. After quickly changing into the tracksuit, I checked the time. Still plenty of time before class began because I came so early. I took the bat in one hand and went out to the schoolyard. That was, of course, to practice my swing. I needed to make it known I would always have a bat on me so I could practice my swing. At some point, the something had become even stronger. Disregarding my classmates as they made their way to school, I took my position in the shadow of the school building. I wasn't the academic type, and I wasn't much of an athlete either. I might get muscle pain if I just suddenly started swinging. I should at least start out with some warm-ups. I doubt anyone would think I was doing something out of the ordinary, which was the exact opposite of my actual mental state. I gripped the bat and swung lightly. That was by no means light. The weight would make it a reliable weapon when it needed to be. Of course, I could only pray that the moment I needed to use this as a weapon would never come. Just carrying it around could deter attacks against me. At least, that's what I hoped. And I wish it was that simple, but we both know it's not going to be.
あれケイちゃんまだ何やってんの？
Being bombarded with such a hysterical voice, I jumped.
ああ、ケイチくん野球部だよ。野球部だよ。
Well, not right now. It was Rena and Neon.
先に行ったって言われて驚いたけど、ケイちゃん、あんた何やってるわけ？
見てわからないかよ。素振りだよ。甲子園だよ。別にダイエットでもいいぞ。
For the championship? Boy, okay.
ダイエットってケイちゃん、そんなに太ってたっけ？
Dang.
ああ、知らなかったろ。実は三段腹なんだ。
Not the beer
もち
belly.
もちでタプタプなんだぞ。
もちもちでタプタプ。
レナ、変な想像しなくていいぞ。
Probably for the best not to. To disrupt Rena from imagining something that vulgar, I ruffled her hair messily.
じゃあまあ、頑張って県大会を目指してちょうだいよ。
Like he's about to
お
get
じ
called
さん
out.
応援してるわ。野球部の強い高校教えよっか。そこにいる左腕の亀田くんがすごいピッチャーなんだけどさ。
Yeah, I feel like you're getting called out. You don't actually know anything. You're not on the baseball team, bro. Seems they've already taken me for a baseball nut. But oh well. No, I feel like that's the... You know, like... I'm giving you false information. Correct me if you actually know anything and should be carrying around a baseball bat. Maybe I'm too suspicious, but... Like, suspicious of everyone, but... Whoops. Well, if I really did make it to the championship, it would be a cinch. After all, I'd be the pitcher and catcher. I'd pitch the ball, then run past the ball I just threw and change over to being the catcher in a burst of super incredible explosive speed. How after I lay at the ludicrous image. Coming back to my senses, I smashed the bat against the ground.
何笑ってんだよ俺
I pounded the ground over and over. With each impact, the reverberation traveling through the bat stung my hands. They smile at me like that. Oh. Ow. Ugh. Don't allow anyone close to me. Don't trust anyone. No matter how many times I tell myself that. It made me smile like that. Oh. Ugh. I knew quite well that there were demons dwelling in my smiling friends. But I just couldn't believe it. Did that kind of split personality really exist? Like how Ren confessed to the doctor. Were they simply being possessed by Oyashiro-sama? In other words, did a supernatural being like Oyashiro-sama really exist? Was it possessing everyone to try and kill me? Yeah, that would be wonderful. If only everyone were actually my friends all along, and everything was all just Oyashiro-sama's fault.
前原圭一のバカ野郎だから
He's losing it, bro. I yelled out, drawing out all the power from the pit of my stomach, and raised the bat violently into the air.
甘えるんじゃね
Jesus, man, he's kind of losing it. I mean, I don't blame him. As I screamed out with all my might, beat the metal bat into the ground over and over. With every impact, my weakness was being beaten down. Smash. Forget. Smash. Don't be soft. Smash. Know your enemy. Smash. Like hell I'd let them kill me. My shoulders heaving up and down from my ragged breathing. I heard the first bell ring just as I calmed down. Boy, better keep up that image of a new baseball player, I guess. I gasped with a sudden realization. That was the final bell. As I felt all the tension drain from me, I let out a deep breath. My mind was in a muddled state for much of the entire day. I didn't feel like I was awake. I didn't feel like I was asleep either. That boy just on autopilot. I couldn't say it felt especially comfortable. I felt a kind of relief that the sanctity of the school part of my daily life had yet to be violated. How long would I have to keep on living like this? I could only grit my teeth and bear with it as this living hell slowly gnawed away at me. Oh yeah, it's gnawing away at him for sure. You can tell.
ケイチくん、やろうやろう。部活の時間なんだよ。だよ。
There's literally no way he's gonna go for the club. The sound of Rena's voice brought me back to my senses.
ほらほらケイちゃんぼーっとしない机を寄せて寄せて
Everyone was moving their desks together as usual. That's right. It was happy fun club time. But I had no intention of taking part. I haphazardly stuffed the contents of my desk into my bag as I prepared to go home. It was a weak-handed gesture to avoid having to actually say, I'll be going home now.
なんだよケイちゃん今日も直帰なわけ
Mion sounded quite disappointed.
気分が乗らないんだしばらくほっといてくんないかな
The tone of the words that spilled from my mouth matched Mion's disapproving glare. Felt like the air in the room had dried out. Satoko looked like she was about to say something, but perhaps dissuaded by the mood, she swallowed her words and stayed silent. Nobody said a thing. I took that to mean that I could leave if I wanted. But the collective gaze of the four of them, like the tiny pins used to mount an insect in a display, held me in place. Rena was the one who cut through the heavy mood.
ケイチくん、やっぱり女の子と一緒に遊ぶのなんか嫌だったかな
I mean, it's not that, but I mean, you can't really tell you what it actually is. She said it in such a melancholic tone that it sent a wave of pain racing through my heart. This pain was going to kill me. I wanted it to be the soft part of me that could still feel pain. I tore my chest, violently tearing out the pins that held me in place.
そういうわけじゃねえよ
I'd only be hurting myself by saying anything more, so I swallowed my words. Cutting things off there, turned away and exited the classroom. Dang, he did it anyways. They didn't speak a word to me as I left. I feel like they're not just gonna let him get away though, are they? Are they? Guess so. It was a long, dull trip back home, but I didn't lose focus. I firmly squeezed the grip of the bat, which was already soggy from sweat. Realizing that, I wiped it down with my sleeve. If something were to happen, I wouldn't want it to be slippery. Since this morning, I've become especially sensitive to the presence of cars. Even while walking, my ears pricked up and sought out threatening sounds and presences that could be closing in. That was why I could hear it. Without a doubt, there were footsteps. Those footsteps had matched up perfectly with mine for a while now. From what I could sense, it was just one person. But I had no intention of being careless. Did they intend to follow me like that car this morning until we were in a good location to assault me? It wasn't a good idea to keep walking like this. I stopped walking and looked back. The wooded path crowded with trees responded with silence as if there was nobody there to begin with. I wouldn't be fooled. Certain footsteps were following me. And just as I stopped, the footsteps stopped as well, meaning the person following me wanted to keep their distance. That was, without question, proof that I was their target. I held my breath, waiting for that presence to panic and start moving again. The trees rustled with the sound of the wind. The Higurashi also joined in the dissonant chorus, trying to throw my focus into disarray. Had 5 minutes passed? Or had I been like this for a whole 30 minutes? It was so hard to breathe that I might have suffocated. It seemed like I would be the first one to panic. But I doubt he was lurking in the shade of that tree with bated breath. Then I'd make the first move. I fixed my grip on the bat. I raised it up to my shoulder to be ready to swing it at any time.
おい、いるんだろそこに。
With all of my might, I screamed at whoever was hiding in the shade of the trees. Which you want to bet it's Rena. But presence in the shade didn't budge. Until the moment I found them, they had no intention of revealing themselves.
分かってんだよ。そこにいるのはよ。
I screamed out angrily at them again, but even still, they didn't move at all. I'll go over there myself. This might be dangerous, but it's probably the right move. With all due vigilance, I approached, step by step. Stepping into the tree's shadow, I saw a human figure there. That figure was curled up like a small animal. It is Rena.
レナ、
When she realized I had found her, her expression softened. She seemed apologetic, but wasn't going to speak a word.
なんか俺に言おうかよ。
I wouldn't accept that silence and screamed the question at her.
別に、
Rena was in a panic with tears welling up in her eyes. It was obvious that she had been following me. And you can't soften up now. Like, I'm worried that, she starts crying, you'll soften up,
部活はどうしたんだよ。
ケイチ君がお休みしたから、レナもお休み。
関係ないだろ。俺なんか気にしないで遊んでろよ。
だって、ケイチ君のこと心配で。
Don't fall for this, dude. This would be so easy to just take her at face value, to choose to accept her words, and then be brought into a terrible position because of it. Thinking about how I'd been acting up until now, it wasn't hard to imagine that my behavior could have been perceived as strange. Serena was concerned. At a quick glance, that's how it would seem. But I wasn't going to let my guard down that easily. Even if that was really the case, she still wouldn't have to do something like try to tail me. She should have called out to me when I was leaving and gone out right with me. But Rena didn't do that. She kept her distance from me and matched my walking speed. On top of that, she matched the sound of her footsteps and deviously tried to hide her presence from me. Then, after she realized I noticed she was there, she held her breath as she tried hiding from me. She wore a timid expression that would force one to take pity on her, but without doubt, she was tailing me. You're right. I'm glad he's not succumbing that easy.
もうついてくんなよ。
Still glaring at Rena, I continued walking onwards. After I'd walked for a bit, she ignored my command and began walking again, so I yelled at her once more.
ついてくるなって言ってるだろ。
だってレナの家も同じ方向だし。
That's a valid point.
じゃあレナが先を歩けよ。レナが見えなくなったら俺も歩く。
I moved out of the way and waved my bat violently to urge her forward.
レナは
No.
ケイチ君と一緒に帰りたいな。
Nope. Making a pitiful expression, she meekly squeaked out the words in a voice that she knew would cut into my heart. That agitated me to no end. I knew it was a lie. If you wanted to go home together, then you should have called out to me. Now you're just blurting out random lies.
ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい。
It seemed that the seething anger within me was written all over my face. Even without me saying anything, Rena hadn't understood what I was feeling inside.
わかったならほら、行けよ。
I swung the bat, urging her again to walk. Rena looked back and forth between me and the bat and started walking hesitantly, then stopped again.
早く行けよ、早く。
行くから、そのバットやめてよ。怖いの。
Rena guarded herself while pointing at me holding the bat. This might just be an act to, turn the town against him. I don't know. She may have realized that I wasn't planning on using this bat for baseball. I lowered the bat, but still guardedly opened the way for her.
行けよ。これなら文句ないだろ。
There was nothing else she could protest. She passed by me timidly so as not to set me off. As I watched her pass by, she stopped completely after having barely moved at all.
おい、立ち止まるなよ。
Then, a powerful gust blew past us, barraging my face with dust. Uh-oh. The dust got into my eyes and clouded my vision. Is this about to turn into a fight scene, bro? While rubbing my eyes with my left hand, I swung blindly with the bat in my right, protecting the small opening I had presented. But Rena didn't even try to attack during that opening. Attack me? No, she hadn't budged an inch. I could tell from the sound of her fluttering skirt in the wind. As her skirt settled, so did the silence. At that moment, the voice inside of me immediately warned me of impending danger. I was caught by surprise. The smell of the air changed. Without me realizing it, the air around me suddenly felt like a calamity was about to befall me. Like the air had suddenly become invisible concrete, like Rena and I were locked in this space. Rena didn't move an inch. Also unable to move, I stared at her back. What is going on? Rena was the first to break the silence. Instantly, she altered her stance. I felt like I had just witnessed her shift from Rena into that other person who looks like Rena. But the voice was one I knew well, which filled me with a kind of bewildering pity. Carelessly, I felt relief upon hearing that pitiful voice.
ごめんね。聞いてもいい？
Too shy to even turn around, Rena squeezed her voice out desperately, as she trembled.
なんだよ。
あのね。どうしてバットなんか持ってるのかな？
The question Rena asked was by no means unexpected.
俺が何を持ってたっていいだろ。
でも、昨日まで持ってなかったし。どうして突然？
別に突然でもいいだろ。俺がバットを持ってるとおかしいかよ。
だって圭一くん、野球とかしない人だったでしょ？おかしいよ。
I couldn't tell what kind of answer she was looking for. I was getting tired of answering her.
突然、野球がしたくなったんだよ。それじゃおかしいか？
おかしいよ。
She answered instantly, and that annoyed me slightly.
突然野球がしたくなった。素振りがしたくなったから、バットを持ち歩いてる。それのどこが変なんだよ。
変。おかしい。絶対。なんで圭一くんまで。
ぶつくさとうるせえやつだな。
You too. Wait. You too. What are the odds this is what happened before the disappearance of the last person?
俺がスポーツに目覚めるのがそんなに変かよ。
I tried to sound a bit more threatening to end the conversation. Till my suspicions about Rena were cleared, I had no obligation to answer her questions.
ごめんね。そんなに怒らないで。
Rena still didn't turn around and spat out words of apology one after the next.
最後に一個だけ教えて。
これ以上話す気も教える気もねえよ。早く行けよ。
I yelled loudly at her, causing her to flinch like she had been struck. Seeing her in such a pathetic state caused my heart to ache sorely. But even though she was afraid, she stubbornly kept herself from moving. Before I was able to threaten her again, Rena asked her final question.
なんでバットまで同じなの？
Is this exactly what happened to the last person? I'm starting to feel there's a little more credence to the idea that maybe Ooishi is kind of in on this. Maybe he is the one planting the messenger of Yashiro-sama, right? And maybe he planted a lot of stuff in our head to lead us along the same paths, right? Of fear. I mean, it's not that, like, we verified much of this information from other sources, you know? I'm just wondering, it's been so long. What are the chances that Tomatake said anything that contradicted what Ooishi-San said? I don't know. Because it's starting to feel more and more like what Ren is saying now. Of course, this could just be like a ruse, but assuming she's speaking the truth, and my suspicions that this was from the locker of the last guy who went missing and died, or died because of these killings of the Watanagashi, right? If it's that similar, right? If we took his bat, right, and that was our weapon of choice, I feel like there might be more than just this town's all against us, right? Now, that's not to absorb Rena and Mion of all responsibility here. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't at least partially on them. But there might be something to the idea that there's something more going on with like Ooishi. But let's move on. What did she mean by the bat was the same? I had no idea what she was talking about.
お前、何言ってんだ？
だから、なんでバットまで同じなのかなって。
何を言ってんだか全然わかんねえよ。もっとはっきり言え。
Even still, Rena didn't turn around. After inhaling deeply, she screamed.
だから、どうしてバットまでサトシ君と同じなの？
Yep.
サトシって、え？
Upon hearing that name out of the blue, I became dumbfounded for a brief moment. Ugh, well now you're vulnerable. By Satoshi, did she mean the student who transferred out last year? No, that couldn't be. Ren had tried to cover it up by saying he transferred, but Ooishi-san told me quite clearly that he was missing. He was the student who sat at my seat up until last year. He was believed to have been demoned away by Oyashiro-sama's curse. I didn't know the details about his disappearance. The aunt he lived with was killed the night of the Watanagashi by a drug addict. Not long after that, he suddenly vanished and was now missing. Oh. Okay, so the aunt was the one who died. The aunt was the one who died. You know? So what? Is this implying that we're about to be the onikakushi and not the nurse? Maybe the nurse has just left. She has actually just left. Right, is this implying... I mean, the name of the chapter is Onikakushi. Is that what this is implying? That we're in the same spot as him, so there's something more to this. I don't know. Let's just keep moving. I'll make some theories once we get some more information, you know? Suddenly vanished and was now missing. That Satoshi and I were... What? My gaze fell to the bat in my hands. Could it be... Satoshi Hojo? It was a bit difficult to see, but that was what was written on the white tape at the end of the bat. I see. So this was Satoshi's.
ああ、これ、サトシのバットだったんだな。誰も使ってなかったんで、ちょっと借りたんだよ。いいだろ、それくらい。
そんなことじゃないの。
The way Rena said that made it seem like this bat was something that should never be touched. Like it was some sort of offering at a shrine, or a memento of the deceased. I can only stand there, perplexed and unable to respond, and I continued speaking without waiting for a reply.
サトシ君の時と、どうしてそんなにまで同じなの？
Yikes. Yeah, okay. This is kind of what I was getting at. Like, just now. I mean, it's not like I made some excellent MLG prediction, but... Rena was talking about more than just the bat belonging to Satoshi.
サトシ君もそうだった。
Same chair, too, by the way.
野球チームには入ってたけど、本当は野球なんか好きじゃない人だったのに。
それが俺とどう関係が？
サトシ君もある日突然バットを持ち歩き始めたの。チームに入ってただけでスポーツなんかしない人だったのに。
What about it? I closed my mouth before I could say that out loud. Listen carefully, Keiichi. Rena's trying to tell us something important.
サトシ君もね、ある日突然一人で登校するようになったの。ケイチ君みたいに。そしてね、ある日突然素振りの練習を始めたの。ケイチ君みたいに。そしてね、ある日突然バットを持ち歩くようになったの。ケイチ君みたいに。そしてね、ある日突然
disappeared. And one day he suddenly... What? Rena had swallowed her words. Rena's sudden silence brought a hush back to the surrounding area. It was then that I could finally digest the content of the entire conversation. She was saying my chain of actions was exactly the same as Satoshi's. What was the meaning of this? Up until just now, I'd forgotten all about Satoshi. I'd never paid much attention to him in the first place. Not only that, I didn't even know anything of what he'd done. My actions today should have been my own creation, after all the planning I had done. But they had been the exact same as Satoshi's. Give us more information. Did he meet with Ooishi? From what we saw from that side conversation, he did, right? And so there might be some credence to the idea that he distilled, or he pushed this chain of events into our heads. And Satoshi, no, more importantly, if both Satoshi and I acted the same, there was a really good possibility that what would happen, that what happened after would be the same.
レナ、ある日突然、サトシはどうしたんだよ。
Rena knew. She knew what became of Satoshi. No, forget about what happened to a guy in the past. Rena knew what was going to happen to me.
答えろよ、レナ。サトシはどうしたんだよ。
With that, I grabbed Rena's shoulder violently and forcibly turned her around to face me, and that's the danger. You opened yourself up. You better hope that this wasn't just some elaborate setup, right? And that you're not about to get shanked and kidnapped. As I faced her, I felt a jolt travel through my entire body. You opened yourself up.
言ったよね、ケイチ君。
Yep. It was that person that I didn't know. At least, definitely wasn't the Rena Ryugu I'd been talking to up until now. The voice just now didn't have a trace of the trembling or emotion that it had before. The amount of regret I felt for turning her around so carelessly was unsurpassed. That gaze that pierced me like a cold needle. The smile on her face that invoked an image of having been carved out by a knife. Chills went down my spine. My mind frozen under a layer of rime. Both of Rena's eyes pierced through mine, leaving me unable to look away. As if to remind me of the fear from that time before. Rena brought her face close to mine, so close that I could feel her breath. Her face had filled my entire field of vision. Then, her sharply shaped lips grew even sharper, like the curve of a crescent moon. She grinned.
言ったよね、ケイチ君。
After a short pause, Rena repeated the same words again.
サトシ君はね、転校しちゃったの。
Yeah. Transferred. Meaning what? What Rena meant must have been some new definition of transfer that I was previously not aware of. My throat and lips dried up. Couldn't even acknowledge what I had just heard. All I did was swallow down my own saliva. It would seem that Rena saw it as a nod. She pulled her gaze back and spryly stepped back 2, 3 paces. As she did, my legs gave out, and I fell to my knees pathetically. Rena, me on my knees underneath her emotionless smile, had to be a very odd sight indeed. Seeing me in that pathetic state, she neither scoffed at me nor held out her hand. I could neither stand nor escape with her gaze shooting through my eyes. There was undoubtedly a metal bat in my hand, but right now, it was useless to me. It was like a fly caught in her web. Heavy sweat beaded all over my body, still dripping from my skin.
しないよね、ケイチ君は。
Rena finally released me from that cage of time after what felt like an eternity. But a question was missing something important that was incredibly vague. Once again, I swallowed hard, urging her on.
何をだよ。
What should she not want me to do?
転校。
It's getting juicy. There's a lot to dissect. I'll say a little here. We'll talk more about it probably at the end. We kind of already talked about Satoshi, right? And how there's a good chance that we're being set up not as the next victim, but as the next onikakushi, right? That is literally the name of this chapter. Onikakushi, right? That's a little bit of meta knowledge. But there's also the fact that Satoshi was the onikakushi in that case. And he's the one who's went missing. And we've He's the one who went missing, right? And we've followed their path so much, right? Same chair, same tendencies those few days, right? I have to look at the tips again. Did they? I don't think they said anything about him meeting Ooishi-San, right? But it's possible. There might be something to that, and it's definitely something I got to keep in mind. But the other thing is, of course, we just saw Rena. We just saw her go into that mode again, right? So there is something up there. And honestly, I'm at a point where I'm not sure that I'm willing to rule out the supernatural, right? It's either Rena is the single greatest manipulator and liar I have seen in like all of fiction, or there is something supernatural at play here. And both possibilities are kind of interesting, I'm not gonna lie. I kind of like the idea of her being like, it's just incredibly manipulative, right? And was playing her cards perfectly right there, right? But I find them both interesting. But clearly something is up with her, right? It isn't the idea that it's all Ooishi-San is not true, right? The idea that it could be him is still true. There's still something up with Rena and Mion though. And so this just, it keeps increasing the possibilities, frankly. So, man, that's all we'll say for now. We might talk about it more later. Let's just go ahead and move on. Satoshi and I had what? All my well-planned actions throughout the day turned out to have been nothing more than a reenactment of what Satoshi had done. Satoshi, had he really been in the same situation as I was now? The friends he had gotten along with had changed suddenly, and for no reason, at least none that I had noticed, planned to kill him? Then, fearing for his life as I am, got a bat to protect himself, and carried it around every day to practice his swing, and then one day, suddenly, he transferred. My blood went cold, causing a prickling sensation to course through my veins. I do want to point out that it does not say transferred from the school. That could mean any number of transfers, right? That could be code for anything, right? Transferred from this realm to another, right? Like, either way, it's clearly not something good. Starting near my heart, it radiated outwards, from the top of my head to the soles of my feet, chilling every part of me without recourse. What did she mean by transfer? What did she mean by transfer? Was Satoshi at wherever he transferred to? Was he the only one who would be able to understand me? Would he be able to tell me why it all ended up like this? More importantly, where did he transfer to? What did she mean by transfer? What did she mean by transfer? That's what you gotta know. If he can find Satoshi, he might find answers. He might find a skeleton, but before I knew it, I was at my front door. The frigid knob was hard to turn. Was nobody home? It wasn't that odd of an occurrence. Reached into my pocket and pulled out the single key attached to my fur seal keychain. Why do I feel like something terrible is going to have happened? I stepped into the entryway. Just as I was about to take off my shoes, a chill ran down my spine. Someone had entered right behind me. Ooh. Like a classmate messing around, standing right up against my back. You're kidding, right? It had to be my imagination. Logically speaking, it was impossible for someone to be able to hide their presence within my personal space all the way through the door. There's undoubtedly someone behind me. Hey now, Keiichi. How do you know they're there even though they're behind you? Because I could hear the sound of flowing hair. There's no other reason I'd hear that sound. That was the presence. Because I hear the sound of them blinking. Keiichi Maibara, there's no way you could hear that. My most base instincts were warning me of the presence. Common sense was telling me that it was just my imagination. It was just my imagination. There was nobody behind me. I began to erase the mental image of an eerie figure standing behind me. But at the same time, I asked myself, if there was nobody, then what was I feeling? As an uncomfortable sensation crawled up my spine. Actually, wouldn't it be better if there was somebody there? If there was nobody there when you turned around, would you be able to accept that? Be able to answer all those questions just by looking behind me? But I didn't have enough courage to even do that simple task. Oh, right. You try speaking to them. The person behind me might answer me. It was a random thought. I didn't care how I went about it, just so long as I didn't have to turn around. If I'd calmed down and thought about it, I would have known that wouldn't have solved anything. Why did I just twitch so much? What the hell? spoke in such a hoarse, broken voice that I couldn't believe it was my own. I almost feel them contemplating their response. I felt it. There's no way I should be able to do that. Calm down, Keiichi. It's all in your head. That time, I was certain I heard it. As if hesitantly trying to answer my inquiry, I was certain I could hear the sound of somebody inhaling. I heard it. I heard it. I heard it clearly. A girl. A young girl. I didn't know who, but a tiny speck of courage in me, however reckless it was, inspired a primal yet fitting solution to this current predicament. A scream. All the force of my body released from my lungs and through my throat, ceasing all thought processes in my head. Suppressing all my thoughts and emotions, I began to collapse like a house of cards, somehow managing to twist my body and look back as I did so. Odds that it's, Satoko? It was definitely there. Right there. Somebody was there. Till the moment I turned around, till I brought the area behind me into my field of vision, they were definitely there. Falling face up, my eyes traced the remnants of the presence suspended in the empty space. It couldn't be. They were invisible. It looked like they weren't there. Or were they actually still standing there? As I screamed, all the emotions I was holding back burst free in a violent wave. However, I was decidedly calm as my emotional dam collapsed. The turbulent wave of pent-up emotions was skillfully diverted into a torrent of aggression. That emotion was definitely required to extricate myself from the bizarre situation happening right in front of me. In my state of heightened lucidity, I entrusted my body to the fury. Metal I held firm in my right hand as if drawn there by a magnet. Ooh, what is he about to just go, like, rampage with that bat? A mid-level sweep would be the hardest attack to dodge. I remembered reading something like that from a book about swordsmanship or something. I brandished my will to fight. The after-image of the amalgamation of metal flashed as it swung from left to right, beating against the entryway. The bat slammed into the right wall, the tip rebounding violently. Very calmly, I transferred the force of the rebound into a sweep to the left. Yeah, he's gone nuts. The door of the shoe cupboard was split into pieces. Those two swings whiffed through empty space. They seemed to have a great psychological impact on the enemy. I could feel the panic emanating from that space. You're not feeling anything, dude. The attack wasn't the only thing required. I extracted the bat from the cupboard it was embedded in and screamed as I spun my entire body around in a large arc. He's gone fully nuts. My scream shook the air, imbuing my ferocious swing with even more destructive power. Crack. Without mercy or restraint, my violent strike, with certainly fatal force behind it, shattered the top of the cupboard. None of my attacks struck the enemy, but my ferocity had certainly seemed to impact them. Breathing heavily, my entire body soaked in sweat, the invisible enemy, there, but not there, dispersed. When I was certain that the enemy had retreated, I locked the front door and latched the chain. No way. Had it only feigned retreat and was now inside my house? Once again, I channeled my aggression, searched the house for the presence. But it was gone. I had succeeded in fending it off. Something like that. At that moment, the tension drained from my body, and I let out a deep sigh of relief. All of the emotions I'd been holding back chaotically merged together and began to flood out. A hodgepodge of fear, accomplishment, and disbelief all mixed together and began to flow through my body. Unable to deal with each individual feeling, I beat them all back with the strongest, exhaustion. Even in this moment, I remained composed. After checking that all the doors throughout the house were locked, I went up to my room on the second floor and closed the curtains. I straightened my back and tilted my head back a little. After clearing my mind of all my idle thoughts, I managed to calm down even more. What was at that front door? What was that at the front door? There was definitely something there. Thinking about it, maybe it was just an apparition I dreamt up in my confused state. I really didn't think that was the case. Calm down, Keiichi Maibara. Compose yourself. No matter how calmly I thought about it, what just happened wasn't a figment of my imagination. It was obviously a supernatural phenomenon. Without a doubt, something was behind me. It wasn't some sort of illusion I saw amidst my confusion and disorientation. Proof? I just one piece. When I asked, "Who is it?" they inhaled as if they were about to answer. That sound had clearly reached my ears. The situation I was in right now was still unclear. Either I'd been possessed by the supernatural phenomenon known as Oyashiro-sama's curse, or this was a ruse by the villagers who believed in it and were imitating it. Either way, their motives were unclear. The roundabout way it had been done was also still a mystery. If it was perpetrated by humans, that would mean admitting that it was Rena and the rest of them doing it. It would be solvable. Ooishi-San and the rest of the place would surely arrest my enemy. But it was a manifestation of Oyashiro-sama's curse. I wondered what would happen. Ooishi-San very clearly declared that curses didn't exist. At that time, those words were pretty dependable. But as things were now, with the rising possibility that the perpetrators were not human, he suddenly seemed quite unreliable. If I told Ooishi-San this was the work of Oyashiro-sama's curse, what would happen? I couldn't imagine his reaction, but it would go without question that a void would expand rapidly between myself and Ooishi-San. With me having so few allies to begin with, not being able to confidently declare whether or not this was a curse, there was no merit to doing that. I better keep the facts of what just happened at the doorway to myself. It would be better if I didn't add what happened here to the memo behind the clock. Boy, you better find some way to explain why you messed up that front entrance. There's still the ever so slight possibility. I was actually confused when I thought I was composed. I was just going berserk in the entryway. How wonderful would that be if that was what really happened? I'd be able to refute Oyashiro-sama's curse. But if I denied Oyashiro-sama's curse, that would mean admitting that Ren and the rest were the perpetrators. If I said that Ren and the rest weren't the perpetrators, then that would mean believing in Oyashiro-sama's curse. By denying both of those, I would be admitting that I myself was losing it. The three options from which I couldn't choose became a trilemma of sorts. They mixed together and formed a whirlpool in my mind, making my head spin. Once again, I straightened myself and leaned my head back slightly to cool myself down. Calm down, Keiichi. Accept what has actually happened as reality. Stop thinking of anything more than that. But I couldn't help but think of it. How wonderful it would be if it turned out I was delirious and everything up until now was a figment of my imagination. Oyashiro-sama's curse wouldn't exist, and I'd still be bestest buddies with Ren and the rest. I would have to be crazy. It was the first time in my life I'd ever wished for such a thing. This is getting nuts, dude. Ooh. Is that Ooishi? The phone rang noisily downstairs. Generally, there were no calls for me, so I never really answered the phone much. But since my parents weren't here, I had no choice. I squirmed off the bed and went downstairs. I have a feeling this is gonna be...
もしもし、前原です。
ケイチ、お母さんだけど。
I intuitively had a bad feeling about this, because I thought she was going to ask me to go out and buy some things. So I took the initiative.
何？別に俺、夕食はインスタントでもいいよ。まだいっぱいあったでしょ。
The other day, we went out as a family and bought a whole case of cup noodles. I wanted to get a bunch of different kinds, actually, but they refused since the individual packs were expensive. So instead, I got a whole case of the mega-sized pork bone and ginger-flavored ones I liked. My parents don't like strong flavors and didn't touch any of them, so the cupboards were still full.
だからさ、買い物に行く必要はないんじゃないの？
ケイチ、買い物のお願いじゃないの。お父さんとお母さんね、お仕事の関係で急遽東京に行かなくちゃならなくなったの。
え？今から？
This was really abrupt.
もう着いちゃってるの。お昼には出発してたからね。
It's quite a distance to Tokyo from Hinamizawa. Gunning at full speed down the highway would still take 6 hours. Dad has a license, but since he doesn't like the highway, they likely took the train. It would have taken longer.
ケイチもお父さんとお母さんの話を聞いてたからわかるかもしれないけど、お父さんのお仕事の契約がね、
Yeah, I was gonna mention
今
that.
ちょっとうまくいってないの。
They set this up, I'm not surprised. Now that you mentioned it, I did remember that they talked all the time about how his job prospects weren't looking so good.
お父さんはそういうのに繊細な人だから、このままだとお仕事にも影響が出ちゃうの。
Part of my father's particular fragile artistic personality, his emotions changed as easily as the fall sky. You could also just say he couldn't take criticism.
でも、そんなの電話でやり取りすればいいじゃないか。
ケイチ、お父さんのお仕事なんだから、もうちょっと応援してあげて。ね。
This is just a really rough time for him,
とにか
but
く電話よりも直接会って話した方が早いの。
I would,
誤解もないし。
and I guess. As their son, there was nothing more I could say once they started talking about work.
だから帰るのは明日の晩になっちゃうの。
Here's to hoping he's there tomorrow night.
圭一、一人で大丈夫よね。
Something like
別
that.
に死にゃしないよ。
圭一、死んじゃうなんて軽々しく言っちゃダメよ。
He really has just been bringing that up all the time recently, huh?
心配事があったら相談してね。
Should, but he
母さん、
can't.
きっと相談に乗れると思うから。
Probably not. Probably not. I don't know, maybe she's a clutch god, but yesterday I did bring up if I died rather abruptly, so I suppose they were a little worried. But really, I was more depressed by the fact that nothing would be solved by telling them. They didn't plan on dying. At least not while I still knew nothing. I would never allow it.
死なないよ。俺はあがいてでも生き延びる。
そう、じゃあね。明日の朝、ちゃんと起きるのよ。朝ごはんは食べてね。お風呂と歯磨きも忘れないのよ。
へいへい。そんじゃ。
That is such a weird thing to tell your parents. I won't die. I won't. I'll survive even if I have to gnaw my leg off. Thinking that internally is one thing. Saying that out loud, just like unprompted, basically. Okay. The call ended like that. Sometimes my parents went off to Tokyo for business meetings, but Tokyo was far away. They normally did things by phone. The times they did go were normally planned out in advance. It never happened this suddenly. I couldn't say that those circumstances didn't feel strange, or rather, unnatural. Anyway, I only needed to recognize the reality of the situation. That tonight, I was the only one in the house. That when my parents came back from work, I'd be gone. Missing. Vanished. Looking back on the series of events of the previous 5 years involving Oyashiro-sama's curse, wouldn't be that strange at all. Come to think of it, it's getting pretty late. I didn't think it was good that the only light on in the whole house was from my room on the second floor. It was the same as broadcasting to the enemy that my parents were gone, and this was their chance. First, I ran to the living room, flicked on the light, and turned the TV on to a reassuring volume. Next was the study. I similarly turned on the lights and some music. With this, from the outside, it looked like my parents were here. Once again, I went through the house, checking to see if there was anything left unlocked. When I saw the veranda and the laundry still hanging out there, I went pale. I would have made it too obvious. I needed to take it down. I snatched down the laundry haphazardly and erased all traces that my mother wasn't there. It should be fine now. Ah, garage. They hadn't gone all the way to Tokyo by car. They had gone up to Okinomiya Station. My garage was empty, wide open, and in plain sight. This was not good. I panicked and rushed out the back to close the normally open garage door. It should be fine now. Ah, I needed to get the paper. Mom always got the paper. Since I left in the afternoon, the evening paper was still out there. He is stressing everything right now. My premonition was correct. I pulled out everything from the mailbox and dropped it in the entryway. With this, for sure this time, it should be fine. Come to think of it, leaving the cupboard busted like that for my little freakout was kind of bad. I'll just say I tripped and fell and the bat I was holding smashed into it. Even so, just leaving it in its current state wasn't good. I should clean it up a little bit before Mom got back and scolded me. Ooh. I remember that there was a broom and dustpan in the closet. I was going to get them. The phone rang once again.
もしもし、前原です。
あら、圭一くん、お母様はいらっしゃいますかしら。
This is such a setup, but like, what can he do? I mean, he has to say no.
今ちょっといないんですけど。
Idiot, Keiichi Maibara. Don't reveal that your parents are gone. You can follow up still. Calm down and take care of it.
すぐに戻ると思います。
That wasn't a good response either. They might say they'll call again. But tell her to call them when she comes back.
なら、結構です。大した話でもありませんから。では、失礼しますわね。
The scenario I feared didn't play out, eliciting a sigh of relief. It hasn't played out yet. That call was fortunate in more ways than one. I'd have to deal with any telephone calls coming in from my parents tonight. I was somehow able to deal with the phone call just now. I couldn't continue to rely on such poor improvisation. I needed to make up a good story to explain that my parents were home, but couldn't answer the phone at the moment. They were making tempura and couldn't step away right now. I wasn't good enough. They were sick and went to bed because they weren't feeling well. Was I going to be safe enough? I was thinking about it on the way back to my room and the phone rang once again. It's like they were calling because they knew I was going to lie. I didn't want to pick up, but I knew I had to. They'd suspect my parents weren't here. I should have just taken the phone off the hook under the pretense that I didn't realize that it was. but since the phone rang, I had to pick it up. I prepared myself and lifted up the receiver.
もしもし。
I stopped announcing that this was the Maibara residence. I had no reason to be kind to someone I didn't know the identity of. But unlike my uncouth voice, the person on the other side sounded goofy and lighthearted.
どうも、夜分遅くに申し訳ありません。
What's up, Ooishi?
私、沖宮書房の大石と申しますが。
What happened to not calling us again?
大石さんですか。
前原さんですか。こんばんは。お元気そうで何よりです。
ちょっと待ってくださいね。
I grabbed the portable handset and rushed up to my room with it. It was the same no matter where I was since there was no one else home. I wanted to be in a spot that just felt a bit safer when speaking on the phone with Ooishi-San.
お待たせしました。
いかがですか、その後お変わりは。
Yeah, everything. Since then, when was that exactly? There was something about the brazen way he talked that rubbed me the wrong way. Last time I spoke with Ooishi-San was 2 days ago. The day I stayed home from school, I met Ooishi-San on the way back from the hospital. And we headed into town for lunch and had a talk. Then after that, Ren and Mion came to check up on me. Whenever I spoke with Ooishi-San, they always knew about it. It was like that since the first time I met him. Today's phone call may well be found out by them as well.
もしもし、聞こえてますか、前原さん。
すみません。なんて言いました？
その後、何か変わったことはありませんか
So
と
you
お
just
尋
gonna
ね
say
した。
no and hang up?
お返事がないんで焦りましたよ。
Yeah.
特には。
The words stopped in my throat. There was a ton of stuff that had happened. All of it baffling. What should I talk about? I didn't understand any of it. I should try asking. If I didn't ask now, I may never have another chance. This night when my parents weren't home, I had no guarantees I would make it through the night safely, after all.
大石さん、やっぱり俺、命を狙われているみたいです。
本当ですか？
偶然の可能性もあるんですが、先日俺が病気で休んだ日、夕方にあの二人がお見舞いに来たんです。
あの二人？
レナとミオンです。そしてそこで大石さんと一緒に昼飯を食ったことを正されました。
それで
お見舞いってことでおはぎを置いていったんですが、その中に針が入ってたんです。偶然飲み込まずに済みましたが、これってやっぱり脅迫でしょうか？
その針は？
よく見かけるような普通の裁縫針のようでした。糸を通す穴が開いていて。
違いますよ、前原さん。針です。
What about it?
証拠になります。
Yeah.
脅迫だと立証できるかもしれません。その針はありますか？
That's right. That's it. Yeah, he already lost that thing, bro. I'm already knowing that thing's gone. I dropped the receiver and rushed downstairs. When I tossed the mochi, I'd overlooked it out of terror. The needle was a valuable piece of evidence. Let's see, I threw the mochi and needle at the wall together. It was there, beyond the living room wall. When my prudent mother had cleaned that living room wall, there was not a trace of mochi left on it. Could it be that it dropped in the gap between the wall and the carpet? I frantically searched by running my palm along the carpet, but nothing turned up. I tried moving around the sofa and desks, pulling up the carpet and flapping it around. I couldn't find the needle. My mom cleaned up everything without noticing it? Just 2 days ago. I didn't know what day they collected the burnable trash. It may still be in the trash bin in the kitchen. I rushed into the kitchen, opened up the lid of the pail, and poured out the contents. But even at a glance, I could tell that it would be incredibly difficult to find the needle in this piece of trash. That boy literally trying to find the needle in the haystack. The garbage stack. I was looking for a needle in a trash stack. I know, I'll try running my hand through it. It was a bit gross, but I was looking for a needle. If I felt a small prick, I'll be able to find it. A pretty tactless method, but it was the quickest. I held my breath and started striking the pile of trash with my hand. Filth flew about. There was nothing more disgusting than this, but it was not the time to be concerned about such details. I continued on for a while, but nothing turned up. I wanted to search more thoroughly, but I was still on the phone. I shouldn't keep Ooishi-San waiting for too long. Later, when Mom got back, I'd have to ask her if there was a needle. I hastily began scribbling on the notepad affixed to the refrigerator with a magnet. Is there a needle? I scrawled the words with a red pen, and then dashed back up the stairs, where I'd been keeping Ooishi-San waiting for far too long.
もしもし、どうでしたか？
見つかりません。あの時はつい気が動転していて。
そうですか。見つかればでいいんです。保管しておいてくださいね。
That's right. The needle wasn't the only incident. I had to tell him about this morning with the hit and run.
あと大石さん、 それだけじゃないんです。実は今朝
That van was definitely aiming for me. I could say that without question due to the circumstances at the time.
その車のナンバープレートは見ましたか？
Nope, we have nothing useful for
こ
you.
ちらでも探してみます。
Damn! At that time, I just flipped out yelling at him, but I didn't look at the plate. What failures on my part with the needle and the plate number? I was so focused just protecting myself that I let some of the most important details slip out of my grasp. I punched my pillow and annoyed at how worthless I was.
すみません。白いワゴン車ってこと以外はわかりません。
仕方ないことですよ、前原さん。惹かれかければ気も動転します。
やっぱりこれだって偶然じゃないですよね。
I mean, it doesn't seem that way. Ooishi-San started to hem and haw over on the other end. I could imagine him folding his
あ
arms.
と、レナの様子もやっぱり怪しいです。
She's probably right outside your door.
それはどんな感じですか？
What Rena said on the way home today, asking why I was so much like Satoshi-kun. Now I could say it with confidence that Rena knew what happened to Satoshi. She knew that there was more to it than him just simply disappearing.
レナは知っています。去年の鬼隠しにあったサトシのことを何か知っています。
それは具体的にどういうことですか？
レナが言うには、俺はサトシとそっくりらしいんです。このまま行くと俺もサトシと同じ運命をたどると、そんな感じのことを言うんです。
運命ですか？具体的にどんな運命をたどるか言及しましたか？
天候と。
天候？
レナはサトシは転校したって言ってるんです。
That's about all she said.
で、俺もこのままだと転校しちゃうぞって。
Ooishi-san let a stern sigh and then let out a stern sigh and then grumbled loudly.
前原さん、それはおそらく何かの脅迫。
Oh, yeah, like 100%.
警告ですね。
The odds of it not being that, one of those two is like incredibly low.
俺もそう思ってます。
At that point, I started to think, would it be so prudent to sum up everything that had happened up until now as the machinations of some human perpetrator? Other than the theory of it being Rena and the others, I was left with Yashiro-sama's curse actually existing as the only explanation. Of course, I couldn't tell it to Ooishi-san, except Rena's strange behavior could be proof of either scenarios. Whether it was Oyashiro-sama's curse being real, or everything being part of a conspiracy committed by all of the villagers, Rena was involved. Rena had to know something. Rena was suspicious. What exactly was Rena? I couldn't help but think she was somehow involved with the prior string of mysterious deaths. I seem to recall that Ooishi-san had admitted that he had dug into Rena's past a little. He was probably just downplaying it when he said a little, meaning he had actually dug pretty deep, most likely. I wanted to hear about Rena. I wanted to know what happened at her previous school, among other things that were still unknown to me. Rena was somebody I should suspect. No, not that. I wanted to know the truth. Tonight I was alone in this huge house. Even though I said I couldn't count on them, I lost the security that I felt I had just by my parents being around. It wasn't like this house was some sort of fortress or castle. If a malicious person decided to use brute force, they'd easily gain entry. There were no other residences close to the Maibara residence. No one would be able to hear anything, no matter how loud it was. I never felt as much resentment towards my father's artistic temperament and the fact that he had this house built at such a remote location as I did right now. Uh-oh. I wondered if I would still be here by tomorrow morning. So I had to ask, right now. Because I had no idea when the next chance would come.
大石さん、聞きたいことがあるんです。隠さないでくださいね。
ええ、何でも聞いてください。
Bro, who is ringing that doorbell? Even though he was so far away on the other end of the line, this was the most reliable he had ever felt. I wanted to ask about Rena, about what happened at her previous school.
実は、レナの。
I noticed a sound that had been going on for a while now. Since I was so focused on the call, I hadn't paid attention to it at first. I finally realized it was the doorbell. The time was 7 o'clock. It's past the time the postman would be making a delivery, past any sensible time for a neighbor to be visiting. I considered just acting like nobody was home, but that wouldn't be any good. It would ruin all the work I put into making it look like my parents were home. I need to answer the door.
もしもし、前原さん？
すみません。誰か来たみたいですので、ちょっと玄関に行ってきます。
お客さんですか。すみません、すみません。 今夜のお電話はこれくらいにしましょうか。
We might have to. That would be a problem.
あ、いえ、すぐ戻りますから。電話はこのままでいいですか？
はいはい、構いませんよ。
I dropped the handset on my bed and dashed down to the door. I needed to make up a good excuse to get them to leave. I had a hunch it was the lady who called right before Ooishi-San did. In which case it would be one of the neighbors who's friends with my mom. I'll just say mom isn't feeling well and went to bed early. That'll be the easiest option. I bet it's Rena. It'd be hard for her to ask me to wake up my mom if she's not feeling well. Like, I doubt it's one of them. Like, I doubt it's just some random person like that. It's gotta be somebody we know. It could even be Ooishi. That'd be wild, but... The bell continued to ring at regular intervals. Someone didn't answer after you rang the bell so much. You'd normally give up and go home, wouldn't you? Without removing the chain, I opened the door slightly and peered out at the visitor. A chill ran down my spine. Knew it. Somewhere deep inside, I had prepared for this moment. I tried to escape by imagining I was the easiest person to deal with. One of my mom's friends.
こんばんは。
レナ。
There shouldn't be any reason for Rena to come over at this hour. Timing also made me feel uneasy, because it was just as I was about to ask Ooishi-San about Rena. I wish I could have chalked this up to mere coincidence, but those unsettling words from Mion several days ago echoed back to me.
さーてね。
You can hide from this
お
old
じさん
man.
にわからないことはないからね。
I had the quote wrong. I'm bad. I thought I was like that. I'm not. But yeah, that's...
レナ一人。
Obviously, that timing, the odds of that being coincidence just are not high.
うん。
Seems that Mion wasn't with her. That didn't change the situation at all.
何しに来たんだよ。
ねえ、ケイチくん。ちゃんとドアを開けてお話ししたいな。
0% chance she's opening that
レ
door.
ナは玄関に入っちゃダメなのかな？
It was true that speaking through a chain door wasn't the right way to talk to a classmate, but...
うち、夜は必ずチェーンかけてるんだよ。気にすんなよ。
That's a
なら
lie.
仕方ないかな。
Straight up lie, but... Rena looked at the ground sadly. She kept smiling, at least, and her efforts to keep that smile up was quite pitiful. Even though she was tugging on my heartstrings, I didn't lower my guard. As long as I stayed like this, even if it made my heart ache, my life wasn't in danger. What I really feared, more than the possibility that hoodlums would assault me if I removed the chain, was trusting Rena enough to remove the chain, and having my friendship betrayed. As long as the chain wasn't unlatched, even if it made my heart ache, I wouldn't have to deal with being betrayed by Rena. Since it didn't seem like I'd removed the chain from her silent urging, she appeared to give up on trying to get into the entranceway.
さ、ケイチくん。ご飯食べた？
No, I haven't eaten. Since my mom wasn't there, dinner wouldn't be ready no matter how long I waited. I laid down when I got home, was woken up by the phone, and didn't have a chance to eat since I used up all that time talking. I was going to have cup noodles in any case. I could just eat one whenever I wanted to.
いや、まだだよ。それがどうしたよ。
じゃあよかった。これ見て。お惣菜とか持ってきてあげたの。
Boy, after what I ate from you last time, hell no. Ren held out a stack of boxes wrapped in a cloth.
お台所とか貸してくれれば、お味噌汁も温めてあげられるよ。
No.
いいよ、そこまでしてくれなくても。
でも、お豆腐もお野菜もたっぷりなの。ケイチくん、そういうの嫌いかな
There's no way I wouldn't like that. I love miso soup with lots of ingredients. White radish, carrots, burdock root, and potatoes. Dense and fibrous root vegetables. Yeah, that miso soup looks incredible.
ご飯も持ってきてあげたから、レンジで温めればすぐ食べられるし。
Without a doubt, Rice needs miso soup. If you let her in, because of your stomach, dog, I'm gonna lose my mind. Stuffing rice down your gullet, sipping miso soup in between ravenous bites. Oh yes, how wonderful it is to be born Japanese.
それからね、またお漬物を作ってきたんだよ。
Bro, if you
今度は
lose to
山菜のお
this...
漬物なの。
Before I moved here to Hinamizawa, I scoffed at the mountain vegetables called sansai. Sansai? But I was captivated by the charm the first time I tried them.
それからね、またお漬物を作ってきたんだよ。今度は山菜のお漬物なの。
Sansai is what it sounded like. Such a deep yet light flavor. Those so-called supermarket vegetables taste rough and overpowering in comparison. You had to describe them, and they were the vegetables for the uninitiated. To become an expert such as myself, you first had to partake of sansai. It was common knowledge around here that the Ryugu family's traditional pickles were wonderfully delicious. No matter what kind of pickles they were, they'd go so well with that fluffy white rice.
それからね、それからね。
Dog, you cannot. Oh wait, there's more. So delicious. It just seems so delicious. Farewell to my unhealthy self who said he'd make do with cup noodles. Ren appeared to be in good spirits, and she was offering such a delicious-sounding dinner. Stress evaporated from my gut, and hunger reared its voracious head. At the same time, my wariness of Rena suddenly dwindled. Rena did say she was alone. It shouldn't be a problem letting her inside, boy, that's so cap, and you know it. Though, the possibility that it was laced with poison still hadn't been ruled out. At that moment, a cold chill ran down my spine once again. Couldn't understand why such a sensation had occurred just then, but the voice inside me sounding the alarm. You might want to just trust your gut, dude. This happy Rena, speaking of this charming dinner, was dependent on one premise. And that premise was that tonight, dinner hadn't been made at my house. Meaning it was under the assumption that my mom, who should be making it, wasn't here. At any normal household, 7 o'clock would be around the middle of dinner time. If my mom were here, we'd be eating dinner around this time as well. The fact that she brought over all the makings of a meal at this time was inherently strange. Unless she knew. Rena, did she know that my parents weren't home? But there was also the chance that this was a bluff. I turned on the lights and a bunch of other stuff to make it seem like my parents were here. There was a chance that Rena was unsure if my parents were home. But I had to wonder. The laundry, the garage, the evening paper. There were plenty of signs of them being hastily tidied up. It's hard to say that Rena didn't have a chance to determine if my parents were here or not. But there's no reason for me to confess that right now. I should try holding on to that fact as long as I could, see if you can get her to slip. First of all, the chain was still latched. As long as I didn't take it off, Rena wouldn't be able to do anything to me. Yeah, I don't know if I'd go that far, but, you know, most likely.
ありがたいんだけどさ、もう少しで夕飯ができるみたいなんだよ。
え、そうなの？そうなの？
せっかくで申し訳ないんだけどさ、その
Unable to think of a good way to refuse, my words trailed off weakly.
でも、ちょっとはおかずになると思うな。思うな。
That's a decent counter.
悪いけど間に合ってるよ。うちのお袋ってさ、結構おかずをいっぱい作るんだよ。だから。
え、おかずあるの？
With a smile that bordered on a cringe, I asked her questions apologetically, but feeling I tried to ignore began creeping up my back again. I spoke as if my mom was setting down dinner right now, but it didn't mesh well with what Rena was saying. Rena was talking as if she was aware of some obvious fact, and that I was aware of it as well.
ケイチ君もおかずとか作れるんだね。何を作ったのかな？
Oh, I didn't make anything.
いや、その別に俺が。
Rena had assumed out of nowhere that I had made the dishes. No, not so much that I'd made them, rather that my mom hadn't.
本当に作ったの？おかず。ケイチ君が？
だから俺が作ったんじゃないよ。お袋が作った。あ、いや、作ってるんだよ。今。
Yeah. Foolish.
だからさ、悪いけどレナの持ってきてくれたのは食べられないんだよ。
Rena fell silent at that moment. That moment, I felt that the light had suddenly disappeared from her eyes.
ケイチ君のお夕飯当ててみようか？
Cup noodles.
なんだっていいじゃないか。
She's calling you out now.
ね。
The conversation might appear natural at first glance, but Rena was firmly in control. Like I was being interrogated.
そのお夕飯、お湯だけで作れるんじゃないかな。
Yeah.
おいおい、侮るなよ。うちのお袋のスペシャルなディナーを見くびるなってんだ。そりゃもう満願全席状態ですごいのなんの。
I tried my best to put on a strong front, but I couldn't grip my teeth quite right. So instead, I looked like someone who was borderline hysterical. Rena showed no reaction whatsoever, even to that silliness.
ケイチ君、本当にお母さん、ご飯作ってってくれたの？
I mean, like, that's it right there. Did she leave us dinner? Why would she know?
いや、だから、くれたんじゃなくて、今作ってるんだよ。
When is she gonna yell lies at us?
もうすぐ晩飯に。
Rena had taken that assertion of mine, that my mother was home and making dinner right now, and was completely ignoring it. I could tell that the more I panicked, the colder Rena became.
ねえ、圭一くん。
At that moment, an uncomfortable chill crept in from the gap in the doorway.
お母さん、お家にいるのかな
I couldn't keep up this charade anymore. And, I knew full well that my parents weren't home. But I'd come too far to admit that now. Anyways, my parents were here and would be having dinner soon. It was the situation I had concocted. So I answered. I told her she was here.
いるよ。もちろん。
I could feel the humidity drying out from the surrounding air. Rena's eyes were becoming even more frigid, piercing me with their gelid glare.
ど
Here
う
it
して
is. Yep, there it is.
何のことかな。
I tried acting casual, but that facade was torn off the instant I looked into Rena's eyes. That look informed me of Rena's response faster than she could open her mouth.
どうしてさっきから嘘をつくのかな
That's a nice screenshot. That's a nice CG, not horrifying at all.
嘘なんか。
嘘だよね。
嘘なんかじゃ。
嘘だよ
Classic. Rena's outburst sent a jolt surging through my body. Ren and I were still separated by what few inches that slightly ajar, but still chained door could afford. But despite that, I was still being cornered. My house, which I'd considered a safe haven until now, had become more like a dark alleyway where no one could save me.
圭一くんのお夕飯当てるよ
She's gonna guess it down to the flavor, bro. I'm already knowing. I know now that Rena had already known that my parents would not be here tonight. It was so strange that it had come to this. Even if she somehow knew that my parents weren't home, there was no way she should be able to guess what I'd be eating tonight. But Rena said she'd guess. How could she guess it? How could she know it was
カ
instant?
ップラーメン当たりでしょ
It's probably too late to find this now. We didn't say... Yeah, no, way too late. We didn't say anything about that to Ooishi-San, right? How the hell does she know that? That I was going to eat... Wait. The cooking repertoire of a man who can't do housework is probably nothing but cup noodles after all. Looking at this statistically, it was the most probable answer. She's gonna guess it to the flavor dog. That didn't mean she was guessing.
ラーメンだけじゃきっとお腹すくと思うなご飯とかも一緒の方がきっと腹持ちいいと思うよ
Calm down, Keiichi Maibara. This was just coincidence. Maybe she's not gonna guess it, but if she really guessed that, like down to the flavor, and I was just reading certain tells of mine, so the fact that she was inferring what I was thinking alarmed me. It wasn't as if she was actually reading my mind. It was being read that she was a demon. No, not a demon. Things like that. They couldn't possibly exist.
好きなの
ラーメンがかよ。
豚骨生姜味
There's too many letters for demons, or too many letters for demons. Ren indicated that the point my answer was addressing was wrong. Her rebuttal was so short that I momentarily didn't understand the words Rena had spoken.
ごめん、レナ。今、なんて。
何が
今さ、何が好きって聞いたんだよ。
It wasn't long before I regretted how carelessly I'd pushed forward with that question. It was such a simple answer. That was why I wasn't able to comprehend it.
豚骨生姜味
What is that saying?
豚骨生姜味
Down to the flavor. I wondered how I appeared in the moments my mind went completely blank until the moment I was able to recover. As my field of view began to distort, slowly swirling in a counterclockwise direction, lost all sense of balance.
なんでそこまでわかるんだよ
I didn't even deny it. That was the type of frenzied state I was in. How could Rena know even this? Not even caring as I mashed my head against the door, I fixated my gaze on Rena. But she didn't even flinch when she saw me do that.
確かに勝った。まとめて勝った。俺が箱買いした。それがどうしてわかるんだ
なんでかな。不思議だね。だね。
How could you dodge the question at a time like this? The chain and the door suddenly were no longer protecting
どう
me.
してわかるなぜ知ってる答えろ
買ったのはセブンスマートだよね。
A shiver ran up my spine. Boy, she's been following you this whole time. I tried covering it up with an angry facade.
だからなんでわかるんだよ
ケイチ君の後ろずっとくっついてたから。
That's what I've been saying. I mean, I'm not gonna act like I've been saying this the whole time, that she's been following us 24/7. But I have been very adamantly saying, she's right behind us. I bet she's right behind us. She's following us. We probably felt her presence earlier before she left. Like, that's what that was, I bet.
何を言ってんだよ
I couldn't understand why she was saying she'd been following me all this time.
だからレナがケイチ君の後ろにずっとくっついてたの。
Like that night? That night I was absorbed in my phone conversation with Ooishi-San. I didn't even sense her being there, standing behind the door. Behind me. Standing there. Just like that?
ケイチ君がいろんなラーメン選んでるとこ、いろんな種類を選んでたんだよね。それでお母さんに怒られたの。高いラーメンばっかり選ぶから一種類にしなさいって。それでケイチ君大好きな大きいカップの豚骨生姜味を選んだんだよね。
Bro, ain't no way they even used something cutesy star at a time like this, bro.
レナも好きだよ、豚骨ラーメン。でも大きいカップは全部食べきれないけどね。
My brain was paralyzed, dulling my senses. It might have been a defense mechanism to diminish the fear I was feeling to non-traumatizing levels. With the fear being diminished, the fog enveloping my mind was cleared away. Then, I could understand what Rena was saying and started to put meaning behind her words. Even so, my fear hadn't subsided completely. It was like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, eyes closed so I didn't have to look down. It didn't actually solve any of the basic problems. I slowly took a step backwards. As I withdrew, Rena advanced. She
だから
opened,
ケイチ君、
opened that door
ここを
herself.
開けて。
No,
レナと一緒にご飯食べよう。
absolutely
きっ
not.
と美味しいから。ね。
Boy, that's how you get mega super murdered. Oh goodness. She's about to open it herself. Rena's pale, slender fingers squirmed through the crack in the door one at a time, as if they had a mind of their own, rattling the chain. If she had unlatched the chain from the door, a feeling of terror would have just exploded within me. But Rena didn't do that. She was simply imploring me to remove the chain. I tried my hardest to light the fuse to the powder keg in my heart, trying again and again. Clatter, clatter. It doesn't light. It doesn't light.
開けて、ケイチ君。
帰ってくれ頼むから帰ってくれ
どうしてそんな意地悪を言うのかな。かな。
帰ってくれ帰れよ帰れ
That boy's scared out of his mind. I don't blame him. And look at Rena's face, dude. The powder keg inside me finally went off. No smoldering, it just exploded. I tackled the door. The force through the door had knocked Rena momentarily off balance. I couldn't hesitate here. I grabbed onto the doorknob with both hands, planted my feet firmly, and pulled with all my might. That slamming sound I had so desired didn't happen. Or did she get her foot in there? I could feel a tiny, disturbing bit of resistance keeping the door from closing. And the source of that was Rena's fingers. Each of those fingers wriggling, squirming around like the tendrils of a carnivorous plane through the crack in the doorway.
痛いよ、ケイチ君。痛い。
It wasn't a harsh shriek, but more of a yelp she was trying to keep back.
帰れ帰れ帰れ
I kept on pulling on the door with all my might. I didn't even realize that if I didn't loosen my pull on the door at least momentarily, Ren wouldn't be able to pull her fingers out. And that was why the door wasn't closing.
本当に痛いの、ケイチ君。 悪ふざけが過ぎたなら謝るよ。
Messing around? You admitted to stalking him. I didn't care one bit for her apology, no matter how much she apologized. It didn't change any of what she had done up until now. It didn't change anything. Bro, I'm just saying. This can, I mean, it ends one of two ways. The door is open, and she removes her fingers, or those fingers come off, and the door closes. I'm not sure which is worse.
痛いの。痛いの。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。
Rena couldn't leave even if she wanted to because I trapped her fingers. Rena's white fingers had become deep red and were no longer even squirming.
ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。
Rena's apologies were occasionally twisted with pain, but like a broken record, she was intent on repeating it over and over. Go away, go away, go away. Stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it. Pulled on the door even harder. Finally, Rena's fingers were somehow able to slip out from their imprisonment in the doorway. The moment that happened, the door closed soundly, and I could hear the thud of Rena falling on her butt on the other side. I locked the door immediately. Made a loud clunk, voicing my rejection to Rena.
ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。圭一くん、ごめんなさい。ここを開けて。圭一くん。
Rena leaned against the door, apologizing profusely and nothing else. After confirming that I was sufficiently sealed off from her, I trudged away from the entryway. On the other side, I could still hear Rena echoing her apology. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Those pitiful words would be forever seeking my forgiveness. I didn't feel bad about this at all. That wasn't out of any sort of malice. I felt a sort of hazy sense of relief that I was able to escape from Rena. Before, Mion had threatened me at this doorway, saying there was nothing she didn't know. And just now, at the same place, Rena told me the same thing. My feeble attempts to disguise the fact my parents weren't here had served no purpose from the start. I should have just pretended to be out and not even opened the door. My meager plans hadn't helped at all, and Hinamizawa was impossible to outwit them. Even though I was on the other side of the door, I wanted to get as far away from Rena as possible. 1 step, 2 steps. With each one, her sniveling apologies became more distant. I sprinted up the stairs and dove into my room. As you would expect, I was finally no longer able to hear Rena repeating her endless apology. Diving into my bed, I was startled by the hard lump I felt. There was something in my bed? It was the receiver. I finally remembered. I was in the middle of a call with Ooishi-San. Looking at the clock, apparently not much time had passed since I went downstairs. Could it be that my clock had run out of batteries? I had talked with Rena for so long. How did almost no time pass? Bro, they checked the clock and they found the note. The hand on the clock was ticking forward 1 second every second as usual. As I put the still warm receiver to my ear, time, which felt frozen, began moving once again.
もしもし、大石さん、お待たせしてすみませんでした。
いえいえ、大してお待ちしていませんよ。
It became apparent that the amount of time that had passed between myself and Ooishi-San was different. Over the phone, I could hear an energetic voice from a sports program or something. It drove home just how far away Ooishi-San really was. Is there actually something to this idea that he's had, like, twice now? That, like, you know, the amount of time that passed was different. Right? Like, earlier with the car, like, he kind of slowed it down. Like, how literal is this? Do we want to really buy into this being, like, extremely literal? I don't know. There's so many things to break down right now. That's not number one on my priority list, but it's something to keep in mind.
今、レナが来ました。
遊びに来たんですか?
I wasn't confident that I could coherently explain the situation to Ooishi-San, but I didn't need to right now. Right now, I needed to know about Rena. That's right. I was planning to ask Ooishi-San more about Rena. Rena's little visit had interrupted the conversation. What was true and what was false? I couldn't tell. The one thing I knew was the single grim reality that Rena was suspicious. I might be able to figure something out if I asked Ooishi-San about her. Up until now, I had regretted it whenever I forced myself to ask about things that I was better off not knowing. But looking at it that way, you could say I'd hit rock bottom. There was no possible way I could feel any more regret than I did right now. No, Rather, I wanted to know if there's anything beyond this I would regret more. Forget about tomorrow. It wasn't out of the realm of possibility for something to happen tonight. I wanted to know everything I could. I was absolutely not going to die like this. Not without knowing anything. It definitely won't.
竜宮レナさんのことですか？調べましたよ。まあ簡単には。
I understood that Ooishi-San was talking in circles. A bit meant I dug so deep it'd be hard to discuss with you since you're a friend.
その簡単な全てを知りたいんです。
あなたが聞いて面白いような話はありませんよ。
大石さん。
I spoke as calmly as possible to Ooishi-San, who was continuing to avoid the issue. And then I said it.
竜宮レナは怪しいと思っています。過去の事件がたとえお社様のたたりによるものだったにせよ、竜宮レナは関わっています。
レナさんが怪しいと思える具体的な証拠があるのですか？
I don't have hard evidence, but the manner in which Ooishi-San spoke became very firm. You have some sort of proof. That was him talking as a detective.
状況証拠だけです。
そうですか。
I could tell even over the phone how disappointed Ooishi-San was. Pulling on the fishing line when he felt a bite, only to reel in the bait. Disappointed, but ready to cast line once more. That's how it seemed.
大石さん、目に見える証拠がなければ動けないんですか？
What I meant was, you can't come and save me without proof. I stuck that barb in there. As Ooishi-san loved roundabout ways of saying things, he understood me just fine.
大丈夫ですよ、前原さん。あなたは私が守ります。
That was not the least bit reassuring. Ooishi-san was just using me to continue his investigation. I was just going to get killed. My corpse would be an important piece of evidence. That was all I was to him.
大石さんの捜査は俺の生死と無関係でしょうが、俺は死ねば終わりなんです。
Ooishi-san went silent on the other end of the line. That may have been too blunt, but I didn't care. All I needed to relay to Ooishi-san was that I was currently in a very dangerous position.
だから話してください、レナのこと。サトシは転校しました。多分俺もそれほど遠くない将来、レナの言う転校をするでしょう。ですが大石さんには俺の死体を見つけることもできないでしょうね。現にサトシの死体だってまだ見つけられてない。
前原さん、どうか落ち着いて。
He just kind of working himself into a frenzy, huh? I was already suppressing my agitation, even without Ooishi-san having to tell me. It wouldn't solve anything if I continued to scream about my mistrust in the police. It would seem that I could only depend on myself and the bad Satoshi left behind to protect myself, and I at least wanted to know about what happened before Rena transferred schools.
つまらない話になるのは覚悟の上ですね。
Ooishi-san, realizing my resolve couldn't be swayed, finally caved.
今の俺にとってつまらない話は何一つありません。お願いします。
まずいくつかお断りすることがあります。
はい。
他言無用でお願いします。また内容には一部憶測も含まれているかもしれません。すべてが真実ではないかもしれないということです。よろしいですね。
I think he's taking whatever shreds of information he can get right now.
真実ではないかもしれない。言ってる意味がよくわかりません。
ひなみ沢の連続開始事件は捜査本部がありません。毎年の事件は個々に扱われています。ですから竜宮レナが捜査線に浮上したことは一度もないのです。つまりですね、
レナの調査は警察としてでなく個人として行ったということですか？
Yeah, pretty
ご理
much.
解いただけて助かります。話のほとんどは電話もしくは会って聞かせてもらったものばかりです。ですから裏が取れていません。鵜呑みにしないでほしいということなんですよ。ご理解いただけますね。
全部聞いた話だけなんですか？
申し訳ないです。個人調査ですのでね。
We don't have anything else to go off right now, so.
あれ、以前レナのカルテを見たって言いませんでしたか？
Chart?
確かにそう聞きましたよ。
Ooishi-san paused for a moment on the other end of the
そ
line.
んなことも言いましたかね。気のせいということにしてください。
I didn't care about Ooishi-san having certain obligations and responsibilities. I also didn't care if there was no proof. Even if they were just rumors, there's no smoke without fire after all.
話してください、大石さん。
わかりました。
Ooishi-san finally opened those tight lips of his. It seemed that Rena lived in Hinamizawa a long time ago. She had moved to Ibaraki Prefecture just before starting elementary school. Then, following that, right after transferring, The unfortunate incident with the breaking of the school windows happened, and Rena confided to the doctor. It was Oyashiro-sama. This was everything I knew.
私が知る話も前原さんと大きくは変わりません。
ではどこを詳しく調べたんですか？
I didn't need to ask. It was the incident right before she transferred back to Hinamizawa.
レナが起こした事件とその後の医者での告白ですね。
はい。
大石さんはその内容を知っているからこそレナたちを疑っているんですね。
ええ、疑っています。
やはりレナたちが犯人。
Did suspect them.
ああ、いえ、疑うとはそういう意味ではないんです。
Ooishi-san was the type of person to say things with confidence. These particular words were less than reassuring.
じゃあ何を疑ってるんですか？
親代様ですよ。
Oof.
親代様のたたりって本当にあるのかな。なんてまあ。
So he's at the point where he believes it too. Okay. He just doesn't want to admit it. Or, of course, he's just lying, and we'll get into... I'm trying to pick apart anything he's saying that might be suspicious. I mean, that is kind of suspicious right there, I'm not gonna lie, but... Ooishi-san's laugh was quite dry, certainly not the kind that would make you want to join in. Ooishi-san resumed the conversation about the dubious circumstances behind Satoshi's disappearance, the course of events leading him to delve into Rena's past. Just then, there was thunder in the distance, and heavy rain started pouring down. It came without warning, the downpour fiercely beating the ground. I had left the window in my room open a crack to let the heat out. The violent wind danced into my room, making curtains flap wildly.
どうしました？
あ、いえ、急にすごい雨が。すみません。どうぞ続けてください。
I got up, was on the phone, and grasped the window.
はじめに事件と申し上げましたが、学校側も被害者も告発していないので、正式には事件ではないのです。でですね、この辺りがどうも関係者皆さん口が重いんですよ。被害者の一人は片目に後遺症を残すぐらい殴られているのにもかかわらずです。
Oh, that's nice.
学校側か、もしくは表沙汰になるのを望まない何者かが、またカウンセリングを担当した神経科医も職業倫理に厳格な方で。もしもし、前原さん、聞こえてます？
What's going on? There was the figure of a person standing by the light near the mailbox this whole time. Even in this torrential rain, they didn't have an umbrella. They were unquestionably drenched from head to toe. In this shower, which more resembled a waterfall, droplets of water dripped down from her hair. Ooh. Just standing there, both arms dangling at her side. In one hand was the stack of boxes, wrapped in cloth. Her eyes focused on my room. Focused on me as I was about to close the window. Her mouth was methodically repeating a chewing motion. As if she had something hard to chew in her mouth, with her cheeks puffing out. What could she be eating over there? How could it be at this time I was more enthralled by Rena, instead of the shocking developments being brought to light by Ooishi-san? If it hadn't started raining, I wouldn't have gone to the window, and I wouldn't have noticed Rena, or would I have noticed that? Rena's mouth was moving in the same pattern. She wasn't eating something, she was repeating something. What was it? Was she repeating to me? What was she saying? Is she still saying I'm sorry? And why was I right up against the window, fixated on her?
もしもし、前原さん、聞こえてますか？もしもーし。
ごめんなさい。
え、前原さん。
ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。
もしもし、前原さん、どうしましたか？
Even in this torrential downpour, Rena was still apologizing. The other self inside me drew the curtain hastily with my right hand, blocking my view of the outside. But even doing that, Rena's relentless apology still reached my ears. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I forgive you for this. Will you forgive me for that? Please stop. Please stop. Please stop. Please stop. I'm sorry. Damn it. Why should I have to forgive her? I'm the one who wants to be forgiven. What part of me can't you forgive? I won't be killed. You won't forgive me, and I won't forgive you either. I won't forgive. I won't forgive. I won't forgive. That boy just ignored me. What is going on in this game, dude? And good God, it's been like 2 hours. Jeez. I'm gonna assume that is the chapter. Split personality and at the 7th Mart. Honestly, before we go through this, I actually just want to talk about some of this stuff first. I probably shouldn't. I should probably get all the information we can get. There's so much. Oh my goodness. This is probably going to be a long outro.
This
one's called Split Personality.
複数の人格を持つことによる
多重人格は逃避の一つなのですか？
作用です。そのメカニズムは完全には解明されていませんが、
例えば貧乏な人がお金持ちになった自分を想像するという現実逃避ってありますよね。これも多重人格なわけですか？
Maybe if they have an entire personality where they're rich.
極論はできませんが、講義的にはそう解釈できます。つまり誰にでもあり得る現象なのです。
その現実逃避の見境がなくなると二重人格になるのですか？
ちょっと難しいですね。そう提唱する説もありますし、否定する説もあります。諸説紛々です。
では精神医学の世界ではまだ多重人格というのは未知の解明されていない現象なんですか？
残念ながらそうなります。今後の研究が期待されます。
でも二重人格なんてなんだかかっこいいですよね。どういう人が二重人格になれるんですか？
Split personalities usually are not a good thing.
なれると言いますか、なりやすいと言いますか。最近の研究では遺伝と死因が複雑に絡み合い、中でも幼少期の育児体験が大きく作用するのではないかと言われています。
Those are interesting. So, if the fact that they're giving this information is like a not so subtle hint that it's a split personality, which would make sense and would explain how it's human, you know, something I don't think I've said the word split personality, but kind of something I've suggested that she has this dark part of her, but it is her. It is still her, right? By that I kind of meant split personality, right? But like, say that's what they're suggesting. Could this be saying, like, you know, if that's what Rena and like Mion and all of them have, right? He was saying, like, I don't know why it's not popped up yet. I guess it's because he's still talking. Childhood abuse, perhaps genetic factors, maybe something about this village. The genetic factors are like just right, and so a lot of people get this. Maybe.
そういえばこの A 君も家庭に問題を抱えてるんですよね。気の毒に7つの人格を持つ青年 A。 では VTR の続きをどうぞ。ですがその前にコマーシャル。
Okay. Alright. At the 7th Mart, is this going to be Rena stalking him? Is that what we're about to watch? 7th Mart was a bargain supermarket with food and alcohol. What's this, Keiichi? So many. There's no reason to get all the different kinds, is there? I flopped all the different colored cup noodle bowls into the cart. Oh, this is Keiichi's perspective.
最近のカップ麺は凝ってて種類も多いんだよ。どれも一通りは食ってみたいし。
I knew it was pretty selfish of me, but I thought I'd at least give it a try. Keiichi. Buy them in the big case. It's cheaper. Dad faltered. Well, I had a feeling it'd end up like this. Now that Dad had thrown his hat into the ring, I'd have to compromise.
それじゃあ1種類しか食えないよ。飽きちゃうって。
I was resisting as a formality. I'd already given up inside. I wasn't sure which case of noodles to get. You can't pick, then Mommy will pick for you. You don't have to rush me. I quickly searched the cases of noodles for what I want. Pork bone and ginger, large cup. Hey, Keiichi, can't you get more of a normal one? I let Mom pick. She'd err on the side of safety and get soy sauce or salt flavored. So when I plonked a large box of pork bone flavor in the shopping cart, Mom looked back at me with an expression as if to say, "These ones?" To show her this was my last compromise, I began explaining the choice.
豚骨はうまいんだよ。大盛りだけど大味ってわけじゃないし。
I remembered insisting that the noodles I picked were the right kind. In this frozen memory and time, this encapsulated world, I didn't have the power to look around my surroundings. So, I did what I could and reached out with my hearing and vision, sharpening my senses to find the presence I overlooked. No matter how much I searched through my field of vision, I couldn't see Rena. I rewound the situation, searching, but of course, I couldn't find her. Then, was she spying on me from my blind spot? I go through the sound and presences again, looking. I could sense the other customers. We're all mixed about, moving as they please. There's nobody looking over this way, and no one trying to get behind me. Not here. Couldn't be here. Probably wasn't here. I would definitely notice if someone was right behind me, even when I wasn't on my guard. I smiled wryly at the thought of using a vague word like probably right before contradicting it with definitely. Then, I paused my mental replay as a chill ran down my spine. There was definitely a presence like a shadow behind me. That was a terror unlike any other. If a presence really had manifested behind me, I would definitely have turned around to check for it. The world had moved on. There was no way for me to turn around. While carrying that frightening shadow on my back, I was gleefully running around the store searching for a case of noodles. Running through the instant noodle section, bad-mouthing my mom. But was that presence constantly in my back, sticking to me like a shadow? No way to see what it was. Realizing it now after the fact was horrifying and repulsive. In that moment of time, I was running around gleefully, carrying that cardboard box, tip-tap. But listening to that moment again, I could hear footsteps other than mine going pit-pat with every step. Tip-tap, tip-tap, tip-tap. Pit-pat, pit-pat, pit-pat. Tip-tap, tip-tap. Pit-pat, pit-pat. Tip-tap, tip-tap. Pit-pat, pit-pat. While I was running, the sound of those barefoot footsteps going pit-pat were right behind mine. Me running around gleefully, a closed-off moment in time. But I didn't hear it. No, I heard it. That's why I remembered it. I didn't think I had heard anything. That's why I didn't turn around. That is why I didn't turn around. In that moment, the pit-pat of those footsteps were following me the entire time. I couldn't run faster and escape. I couldn't run any faster than I had at that time. I couldn't turn around. I hadn't turned around before. Not once. Then I returned to my parents and started talking. The shadow-like presence was right at my back. As I didn't move, the shadow didn't move. That is why I made no sound. That was all. At that time, I hadn't taken a single step while talking with my parents. I was just standing there. This was undeniable. And yet, I heard it. A pit-pat. It shouldn't be. If I took 3 steps, it followed 3 steps. Wasn't that the rule? There was no sound other than that. At that time, the entire world had gone dark. Sudden darkness. It was the end of my reflective journey. I was tired. I wanted to end it. Someone turn on the light. So my body couldn't move. As if I was sewn into that moment in time. Pit-pat. My past self's hair stood on end. It's impossible. And that's just breaking the rules. I haven't moved. So you shouldn't be moving either. I couldn't move. So you shouldn't be able to move either. Follow the rules. Pit-pat. Yet that sound echoed in the darkness once again. The hair on the back of my neck pricked up on end. It was so close. It was hard to tell whether it was touching the hair or not. Why couldn't I move? Like how the presence was moving behind me. Quickly realized I could move. It's just that I was scared and didn't want to. Now was the only time I could turn around. It was something unforgivable in this moment in time, but I needed to turn around immediately, as if my entire being was trying to force me to stop. I began to administer a pain like a needle being stuck into my every pore. I'll turn around. I'll turn around. I'm not scared at all. I'll turn around. I'll turn around. I'm not scared at all. A scream I was unable to vocalize. It's 8 a.m. I'm not trying to imitate that scream. I turned around. At first, I couldn't understand the meaning of it. What is this? Just as a person's mouth might bite into an apple, slurp the juices, finally discover that it was an apple, my mind began to process the scene before my eyes by eating the apple. Munch, munch, chew, chew. Slurp the juices and discover the apple. Meaning, what was in front of me was... Soak him. No way they left it like that, bro. Diabolical for that. Alright, let's go ahead and save, first of all. Oh, I didn't save after chapter 10. Whoops. Jeez, man. Well. Okay, so this whole episode was nuts. This whole episode was nuts. Oh, man. Everything about this chapter, though, was just utterly insane. Utterly insane. My god, I don't even know what to say. Like, just everything about this chapter, man, was just nuts. Like, from him almost getting hit by that car, right? I think that was this chapter. It's been 2 hours. Like, there was a lot in this chapter. I'm trying to make sure that I'm not, like, remembering things that were in the last chapter. I mean, no, that was definitely this chapter, because this is when he went to get the bat. This is when he went to get the bat. He almost got hit by a car. Somebody tried to kill him. Straight up tried to murder him. And he narrowly lives. He gets there. He gets the baseball bat, right? And he's going through the motions, acting like, you know, I'm going to join the baseball team, even though he's never been interested in sports. And all of a sudden, while he's walking home, Ren is following him. And when he confronts her, she tells him the shocking fact that this is exactly what happened to Satoshi. Exactly what happened to him. Or exactly what he did. Right? He all of a sudden started breaking apart from the group. He someday comes back, right? And he's suddenly got a baseball bat, and he's suddenly practicing his swing, and then he goes missing. So there's only one step left. Right? And of course, then she goes into her super creepy mode and threatens the hell out of him. Right? But, like, I mean, that's alarming information. Right? Like, is he being gamed down the same exact path that Satoshi was? That's the question. That is the question. Like, and the only person I could really see him being gamed by, like this, is Ooishi, right? If he's being gamed, right? Like, that's just so coincidental. Down to the same bat, dude? I don't know. Could it be him? We'll check that tip here in a minute. After I kind of finish the review, right? We get home, right? He's super paranoid. Well, first of all, he has a just a psychotic episode practically, and absolutely annihilates that front door area, right? Breaks the cupboards and stuff because he thought he felt a presence. The truth is, he probably did. He probably did feel a presence. He was probably correct. He probably just too long to say something about it, right? right? And I would bet it was Rena, and she somehow got away. That's what I would bet. I don't know. Unless they are going to go down the route that this is straight up Yashiro-sama as a spirit following him, right? Which would explain why they know literally everything. And this spirit can possess whoever they want, which explains the sudden personality shift. Is that possible? Sure. It's very possible. It's kind of a hard thing to prove. So I'm not going to buy super deep into super, like, mystical, I guess, kind of theories like that. I'm not denying that they're possible. It's very possible. I could definitely see it. It just depends. I genuinely don't know how supernatural Higurashi is going to be. Right? If it's going to be relatively supernatural, right? If it's going to be relatively supernatural, I could see that explanation. If not, if it's not going to be very supernatural, we have to just assume that was Rena. Either way, he felt something there. Or maybe he was just having a psychotic episode, and there was no one there the whole time. But given what we know from what Rena told us later, it being Rena seems pretty likely. Right? Anyways. You know, like, just freaks out, man. Becomes super paranoid, locks everything up. Right? Gets on... He's hiding the fact that his mother's not home. And... he calls Ooishi, you know, whatever. Or Ooishi calls him, whatever. We didn't find out anything too interesting from that first call with him, right? And then Rena shows up. Boy, was that something. He refuses to open the chain. She knows he's lying, that his mom is not home. Like, she knows, and she came, right? Because she's been following him this whole time, right? Probably got information from someone else. She was trying to get in. It's debatable what she was going to do, but she was trying to get in, and he refuses it. Like, I mean, when he's just slammed that door, they were just, I'm sorry, go away, he's slamming the hell out of that door. Like, this episode was just so intense. I know I'm just giving a summary right now, man, but like, there's so much happened. I need to say it out loud again to process it all myself. Like, goodness. Of course, gets back on the phone with Ooishi. He was kind of starting to say something there. He really was. About how somebody got beat so bad that, like, they couldn't use one of their eyes or something, and no one would really come forward. Right? And there's also the interesting fact that he at least said something about believing it was Yashiro-sama's curse. Whether he was serious or just joking, I don't know, because he had like a little dry laugh afterwards. But it's starting to feel like, I don't know, maybe there is more to him than there seems. Maybe I'm falling hook, line, and sinker for whatever they want me to fall for, right, regarding Ooishi, right? I don't know. Because they literally went out into our, like, in our face. We're like, yeah, maybe he isn't a good guy. I don't know. Was that a red herring, or was that just, like, this big thing of foreshadowing? Or was that a, if you haven't noticed by now, you're dumb? Here's a blatant hint. I don't know which of those it was, frankly. But, jeez, man. I mean, you gotta, we really need to, like, analyze everything about Ooishi. We're gonna look at that tip again and see if there's anything there that might tip us off to the idea that he led Satoshi down the path that he ended up on. Because if there's something to that, there's a very good reason to suspect Ooishi as well. I don't know. I mean, so far he's fed us pretty good information, but like he said, he can't really, you know, we can't verify that information with anyone else. This is all just from a personal investigation. You know, we have no way to verify this with other police officers who have seen the same information he has. For all we know, he could be lying about literally everything. Like, literally everything. Right? We know he's been right about some things, though. At the very least. Right? Like, the fact that, you know, Satoshi was Satoko's cousin. Right? He's the one who told us that, and he was right. So, not everything he says is lies. But we gotta take what he's saying with a grain of salt. I feel like I've been trusting him a little too much, when I probably shouldn't be trusting him this much. But really, one of the most chilling scenes was Rena's still sitting there saying I'm sorry in the torrential rain. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too soft-hearted, but it's starting to make me feel like Rena isn't just this evil character. maybe I'm just buying into it, man. But I can't help but feel like maybe there's more there, right? Maybe she genuinely can't control these, like, these sudden aggressive, like, moments, right? Like, maybe it is just this split personality thing, and that's how she endures things, right? When she gets too frustrated to keep it in. I don't know. But the fact that she's sitting there the whole time saying, you know, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, it really doesn't just feel like, you know, she's trying to break in. I figured if that was her goal, she would have broken into our window. It's starting to just feel like she's like, I don't know, yandere, right? Like, obsessed with us, right? To the point that she's stalking us, and when she realizes she's crossed the line, is like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, like, desperately trying to get us to accept her apology, which means she's probably going to kill us next episode when we don't accept it. But I don't know, maybe I'm really falling for the bait, but I'm starting to feel like there's just more, you know? I mean, there is obviously more, we just don't know what it is, but I'm starting to wonder if that good side to her is, like, genuine, right? Because I had always been seeing that as a facade, right? This whole time, that was all just a facade, right? Maybe it was genuine. I don't know. So much to say. That scene in the rain was kind of chilling. I really am so excited to play again tomorrow and see where that leads, man. Let's go ahead and rewatch the... It was this one, right? I'm gonna skip through it just a little bit, but...
さあどう思う？さあ、ケイちゃんひょっと。わか。あの日、ケイちゃんと車で話してたの。中年のでっぷりした男だ。うん。大石のやつ、ケイちゃんに何を吹き込んでるのかな。
I mean, they knew who it was, which is...
真剣そうだったよ。
あのね、実はあいつ。あいつが現れるとね。
あれ？
おととし、リカちゃんのお母さんが受水したでしょ。その直前に大石が尋問してたんだよ。
Absolutely nothing about Satoshi, though.
そういえば、サトシ君が転校する前にもいたね。
転校？レナはいいやつだよな。
I mean, there's kind of the confirmation we needed. It was around for Satoshi. I don't know.
で、今度はケイチ君。
Them laughing like that is still really creepy and definitely makes it feel like they're still in on this, but like, and they're like, oh, that's the one we're demoning away. But like, the way they're talking about it, and the way the fact that he was there for Satoshi really is starting to make me really suspicious of Ooishi. I don't know, man. I don't know. You know what's really crazy? If I had just, like, paid a little more attention, you could have realized that everybody was connected. I mean, we kind of realized here, right? But I did not realize, you know, Hojo and Furude. I don't know when we got those last names. It was probably after this, or I'm just really unobservant, apparently. But the fact that I just kind of didn't think about it, like, forgot about it, you know? Real information there. Okay. I don't think there's much more I can glean from this other than, I mean, my big takeaways are, I think Ooishi's a little more suspicious than I would have let on, or like expected a while ago. And I think maybe I am just taking the bait, but I feel like there's more to Rena. I feel like the nice, like, side of her, right, the nice cutesy side, I feel like that is still part of the real Rena, you know? Her being split personality could make sense to me. I don't know. Just the way she's still sitting there, right, it really makes me feel like she truly does feel sympathy, right? But then there's a part of her that is doing the clearly, like, demonic thing she's doing, right? I don't know. So interesting, man. I'm so looking forward to playing again tomorrow. I hope you guys are looking forward to the last episode of this chapter. I don't know when this video is coming out. I don't know when the next video is coming out. All I know is I am going to be recording it tomorrow, and then I will be gone until around the 21st. That's when I'll be getting back, I think. And so I'll probably be recording again shortly after that. So I'll probably try to pace out the uploads so that it's not going to be like a ridiculously long, like, full 1 week break. Like, I'm not going to upload these videos like back to back. I might even split it into 3. I don't know. I'm going to do the editing tomorrow. But anyways, point is, I don't know when I'm going to be able to get the to the next chapter, but kind of expect a little break and needs to be paced out a little bit. But it's not going to be like a, like a month-long break like last time. So anyways, like I said, I don't know the exact day the next episode's going to come out, but it's going to come out. And I'm looking forward to playing it. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys there. Peace.